Good evening and welcome to this joint workshop of the Scarborough and Old Orchard Beach Town Councils regarding public safety communications upgrade project. Thank you to the town councilors from Old Orchard who are here, along with public safety representatives from both towns. Before we get into things, I'd like to just have us do a quick round of introductions, and then we can go into the presentation and discussions. I'm Corey Fellows. I'm the town council chair here in Scarborough.
Karen Shu from Town Council.
Larry Kane, Vice Chair.
Mark Holmquist, Scarborough Police Chief.
Rich Kindle, Scarborough Fire Chief.
John Gilboy, Old Orchard Beach Fire Chief.
Liz Chard, Police Chief in Old Orchard.
Connor Ague, Counselor, Old Orchard. Mike Tusignan, Counselor, Old Orchard.
Jay Kelly, Counselor, Old Orchard.
Tim Fleury with the Town Manager's Office.
Jay McAdams, Deputy Communications Manager for Scarborough.
Joe Thornton, Scarborough Communications Manager.
Michelle Hayes, Town Council.
Don Anderson, Town Council.
Bill Donovan, Town Council.
Liam Gallagher, Assistant Town Manager.
Thanks again for all being here. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Liam to kick us off. Great, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'd like to provide some context for this evening's workshop, give some background to the project we're going to be talking a lot about tonight, and maybe set some expectations for what we hope to accomplish. The presentation you're going to see this evening and our staff will go through is really kind of the culmination of almost 2 years of work already. Discussions, contemplating a radio study to understand kind of the current status of our existing radio system. I think what you'll come away with is an appreciation that this touches a lot of different departments in both of our towns. And it's really kind of an invisible concern for a lot of people. So hopefully we do some education in that regard to bring everyone up to speed. I think if the councils can come away and general public can come away with a good understanding of what the problem is and a pretty good understanding of what a solution could be, I think that's kind of what success looks like for this workshop. So I'm going to go through just a few opening slides and then turn it over to primarily Jay McAdams, who's our Deputy Communications Manager, who will lead us through a number of the slides. And we have our chiefs here also this evening will provide some additional anecdotal commentary on some of our challenges. So bear with me. So just to level set some expectations, talk about the background. So this kind of the background or the groundwork for this project was really contemplated in the FY25 budget. So we really started talking about a radio study that was completed in this year's budget, but initially discussed back in the spring of 2024. The purpose of that study was to really understand what the existing infrastructure, coverage, challenges, gaps, all of those things with our existing radio infrastructure are. So we went through that work at the beginning of this fiscal year in 2025, and really had a good understanding using a consultant, again, where those gaps are. In the FY26 budget, so the current year budget, we did feature essentially a CIP item for this project to the tune of $13 million here in Scarborough. So that was identified for potentially for the FY27 budget. And our staff has really done the work to understand all of those pieces. So all of that is to say that this isn't new. This has been on our radar. We may not have fully appreciated the scope 2 years ago of what this would take to bring our systems up to snuff, but it is something that's been in the works for some time. So with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Jay.
Yeah. So again, thank you, Liam. My name is Jay McAdams. I'm the Deputy Communications Manager for Town of Scarborough and the project manager for this project. Just to give everybody a quick glimpse into the status of our current system. And starting off just real basic, I've got to talk about we're going to be talking about frequencies and bandwidth and those sorts of things that all play a part into the radio system. So there are 3 primary radio frequency ranges used in public safety and throughout municipal radio systems. VHF, which is very high frequency in the 150 megahertz range. UHF is ultra high frequency in the 400 megahertz range. And then digital, which is 700 to 800 megahertz. The frequency ranges correlate directly with the wavelength of the signal. And I promise this won't all be this technical and just get this out of the way quick. The lower the frequency number, the longer the wave. And those longer wavelengths can travel further, but they can't penetrate buildings as well. They can't get through the brick and the concrete of the buildings. As you get higher in the frequency bands, the range of the wave is shorter. So it can't travel as far, but it can penetrate buildings much better. So it's a little bit of a trade-off. You're giving one for another. Both towns primarily use VHF systems. And that VHF technology dates back to the 50s. And the setup of our system dates back to technology that was first came into use back in the 50s. We have a half duplex single transmit site with multiple receive sites. So that means that we transmit out of one location for each town. So in Scarborough, we transmit out of the public safety building, the tower next to us here, and down Old Orchard, it's down at the fire station. The receive sites are in Scarborough at the fire stations in North Scarborough, Pine Point, and Pleasant Hill, and also at the Eight Corners School, the main medical campus down on Campus Drive off of Route 1, and Springbrook Park off of Broad Turn Road. In Old Orchard, the receive sites are Town Hall and Public Works. So, like I said, the technology is from back in the 50s. Fortunately, our infrastructure isn't quite that old, but we do have some parts that were installed back in the 90s. So much of our infrastructure, much of our equipment is at end of life, has far exceeded end of life, or is nearing that point now. That fact, along with the fact that we have older equipment and technology, we deal with decreased signal reliability. That older equipment, it degrades over time, and it weakens the ability to have longer range and penetration into buildings, that sort of thing. We also dealt with narrowbanding back in 2013, which was a big factor, and reduced. What that did was it reduced the frequency spacing and opened the spectrum up to more congestion. The VHF spectrum is very congested right now. There's no room to grow and no room to move. And what that does is it increases the noise floor, which is static and interference and problems with the radio. Those problems are bigger and more impactful in areas where we don't have overlapping coverage. Areas like Outer Broad Turn, areas like Higgins Beach and Old Orchard, the Outer East Grand area, have big problems with those signal degradation. And like I said, the spectrum's at capacity. We're in a position now where we need more channels to operate at a level where our communities can grow and can expand. And because the spectrum's at capacity, we can't get them. So we're limited, and we have no versatility and no expandability options with our current system. Next slide. So here we have just a quick kind of outline of what we have right now again. So most of the systems are VHF. We have a couple of UHF systems that we're using. They're all independent and completely segmented from each other. There's no combined channels or options for interoperability or anything like that. We can't work with each other in an easy, simple way. Scarborough Schools and Scarborough Sanitary are on UHF systems. That being a completely different spectrum, it makes it even more difficult to communicate. And as you can see, the Scarborough Schools badge is up there twice. That's because the bus department is on VHF and the school department is on UHF. So they can't easily even communicate with each other. And that makes it obviously difficult for them to communicate with public safety if there was some sort of an incident at a school or something like that. Those challenges just compound upon themselves. So at this point, we can go to the next slide. We've got a map here. This is just this is an overall map of our current existing coverage as it stands right now. So you've got the white. I'm just going to go through the colors real quick. Your white color there signifies your ability to use the radio inside of large buildings. Orange is residential. Blue is in-street coverage, and gray is no or very poor coverage anywhere in the town. So again, that area in Outer Broad Turn, Higgins Beach, those are big concerns for us. I'll turn it over, I think, to one of the chiefs here to go through some examples.
So thank you, Jay, for that. My name is Rich Kindle. I'm the fire chief here in the town of Scarborough. And one of the issues that we continue to struggle with, and I just wanted to reference back to something that Jay McAdams mentioned, narrowband. Our problems really started back in narrowbanding in 2013, where they narrowed that frequency scope where we couldn't get additional frequencies, or that congestion just really took over. This was a federally mandated requirement. We ended up complying with that. And as that started to happen, we started to see the degradation of our system from even simple volume, hearing modulation from the dispatcher or from the providers. So that narrowbanding really was, I think, the start of this when this really started to go downhill. I did want to speak real quick to something that Jay mentioned too about the multiple frequencies, and the need for frequencies is today. It's not something that we need to expand. We are currently, as many of you can hear us running all day, same thing with Old Orchard. We have multiple calls going on a regular basis, and having additional frequencies to be able to manage those calls in a more efficient and safe way is one of the reasons why. So it's a need today, not necessarily for just expansion, which we still do need. One of the largest anecdotes that I brought today was in 2018, when I took over as the deputy fire chief of EMS here. I was tasked with running an exercise, a full-scale exercise in the school system for an active threat. We worked with federal partners, with Cumberland County EMA, state EMA, and all our communities around us. And one of the major issues that we found, and specifically to the middle school, which has really come to be the worst school, I think, as far as ability to have coverage in, is in the after action review the communication was one of the biggest points of failure for us. We couldn't communicate with each other. We couldn't communicate with our mutual aid partners. We couldn't communicate with federal partners and things like that when we were responding. And that really showed in all levels. We couldn't communicate with school staff. And I know there'll be some more anecdotes about the schools from the chief of police as well. Some of the other issues that we continue to have, and these started shortly after narrowbanding, the North and West Scarborough area, for many, many years, there's been dedicated call company volunteer firefighters that still provide service to this community. We couldn't even notify them in some of the areas that you're seeing on that map that are so poorly covered with either pagers. The one savior for us, I think, that really brought us out of that and gave us a little bit of buffer was cellular technology. We were able to find some apps and stuff to get that information out and get people a little bit better attuned to getting those notifications. But today, still to this day, North and West Scarborough is really a difficult area for us to operate in, even with the technology that we put into place to try and alleviate those problems. There's certainly the opportunity to hear some examples of that in the end. Portable coverage was something back in 2018 when I took over. There was something going on in town where there were some concerns about our portable radio coverage. The town of Scarborough Fire Department, we came to the council and we invested in some new portables for the fire department. While that helped a little bit, it still did not solve the problem with frequencies and all those other things. So we are really we operate on our portable radios more often than even the ones in the truck. We're only in the truck for 4 or 5 minutes on the way, then everything else is operated in those portables. And those portables have really become non-consistent and really a source of a failure that could potentially happen. So,
Thank you, Chief. Again, my name is Mark Holmquist, Chief of Police here in Scarborough, and I just want to thank both councils for taking time to spend with us tonight to learn more about this project, and a lot of effort by those two gentlemen over there, Joe Thornton, our dispatch manager, as well as Jay McAdams, our deputy manager. They put a lot of time into this over the last year and a half or two to get us to this point tonight. So thank you. Some of the things I'm going to cover tonight, basically just operational issues. In speaking with some folks in the field, to include our 2 SROs, one at the middle school, one at the high school, as well as one of our lead dispatchers, one of our supervisors at has a lot of experience in the dispatch center, just to get their feedback about the current state of our radio system. The chief mentioned Northwest Scarborough is definitely an area that we would like to improve upon in our coverage. And if you just take a look at that map, basically at I'd say your 10 to 11 o'clock in that northwest pocket of Scarborough, that's all gray. That means when you're on your portable, there may not be any coverage if you get into a situation. So one of the cases that I want to reference, and hopefully we have the audio, Liam. Let me just kind of lead into it. This was a case where we had a search warrant for a residence that we had some history at in the past. It was a high risk warrant to include, weapons, drugs, you name it, and lots of individuals. So we needed to have good radio coverage. And when we had units up on the scene, we had some folks leave upon the presence of the police officers driving into their driveways. We had quite a situation there. And one of our officers, Sean Anastasov, was trying to transmit on his portable radio, and dispatch was trying to communicate with him to get a status of what he had at the scene. And you can hear the supervisor, Craig Hebert. You'll hear him. He's in his cruiser. He's got the lights and sirens going, and you can hear him transmit. And right off, he identifies that in that pocket of town, we may need to go direct with our body-worn cameras, which has a live feed function. So one of our detectives back at the PD was able to get onto that live feed, and he was able to see that the units on scene were all set. Great to have that technology, but certainly our primary source of communication always is the radio, and the body-worn camera in this instance is just a backup, just in case. So Liam, if we have that.
Big ask, if not, we'll get it out. Try one more time.
Oh, he actually left the room, so I will keep going, Marty. Yeah, I guess. So some other examples of places in town, if we want to go back to Scarborough.
Chief, if I could just quick, you mentioned you mentioned SROs earlier, just for everyone's benefit. That's school resource officers.
School resource officers. Yep. Thank you. Yeah. If my descriptions aren't complete, please ask the question. We get it, Liam?
No, it's not gonna participate without doing feedback.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if we go back to the map, if you take a look, obviously we've already identified Northwest Scarborough. If you look at our beach areas, and speaking with our lead dispatcher, Ann Pritchard, she mentioned that Pine Point is decent with portable coverage. But Higgins Beach is a huge issue. And I've been here for almost 5 years, and I can hear our parking enforcement and our reserve officers, as well as our ACO and our park rangers at times, struggling to get out on the radio. So that's a huge issue. Our box stores are commercial buildings. If we get a complaint at Walmart, which we're at Walmart quite a bit for different calls for service, it's virtually impossible to transmit on their portable radios to get outside to dispatch. So that's one of the things that we hope to improve upon with this system. And then last but not least, our school system. We've already identified that the middle school is a tough spot for us to get any type of traffic out on a portable radio. I spoke with our middle school resource officer, or otherwise SRO, Tim Dalton. He indicated that if he gets into a situation, he knows that he's got a very short span of time to be able to key the mic on the portable, be able to get out some type of traffic that will get backup units to respond. He said that he doesn't have a high level of confidence that if they had a major incident, that he would be able to direct those first responders that are coming to help him. he wouldn't be able to direct them in with his radio. He'd have to get on his cell phone if he could within the building, or find another way to communicate. So that's problematic. Our high school SRO, Mike Beeler, indicated that the portable coverage is not consistent in the high school, and even outside the high school. One of his duties is to direct traffic out in the parking lot after school. And he said sometimes that he'll go to talk on the radio and he's not able to transmit with dispatch. And it's a pretty close proximity from our high school parking lot to our dispatch center. So that is very problematic for us. We had an incident where the Wentworth School was evacuated about 1.5 years ago, Chief. We had some issues with communications. A lot of the units were actually calling on their cell phones to be able to communicate. So obviously all those things are problematic. As far as the dispatch center, our lead dispatcher, Ann Pritchard, she mentioned to me that it's frustrating for her to have to ask different units, whether they're in their car or on their portable, whether they're outside on the street or in their residence, to repeat their traffic constantly. And if we could get some of these examples to queue up at some point, I know you're going to get copies of this. You'll be able to do this on your own, and you'll be able to hear the traffic and the frustration that we have when we're responding to try to help people and we can't hear them. So she mentioned that's a frustration. She said it's difficult to hear our school resource officers, especially at the middle school. And she also mentioned Higgins Beach as being a big frustration. Yes, ma'am.
Just a quick question. When you look at how much gray's on the map, especially when you get out into sort of the west area, what happens when we have a multi-town response to a situation that's occurring, like say on the Buxton line, and you're trying to communicate with other departments that are clearly in the gray area?
Yeah, that certainly we're going to get into that in a few slides, but I'll turn that over to our fire chiefs because they deal with that mutual aid assistance on a regular basis.
Want to wait till the slide, or you want me to answer that?
We can answer it now.
Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
So interoperability, Chief Gilboy and I and our staff deal with that on a regular basis. And there's another map that's going to be up there that shows what each town kind of operates in their own environment for radios. But it's very difficult for Scarborough to operate in interoperable with all the towns that we do mutual aid with: Portland, South Portland, Westbrook, Biddeford. We have to change radios. We sometimes are sharing. We have to go to somebody's truck and get a different radio to be able to operate efficiently. The big issue is once we get there and we set up and we can get it done within a reasonable amount of time. However, all that time that's minutes for us to be able to operate efficiently with each. None of us can do this job alone anymore. Our staffing is all to a point where we rely on each other to do this work and to be able to work efficiently. The systems themselves are going to be a big hurdle for us. Westbrook has a separate type of system. Portland and Biddeford have separate type. They have the system that we're interested in looking at. Cape Elizabeth is different. So there's all these differences, and trying to figure that out in the height of an emergency is becoming a really big challenge for us, Chief.
Yes. John Gilboy, Old Orchard Fire. So I can speak for Biddeford is operating on the 800 trunk system. So we are automatic RIT. So RIT is the Rapid Intervention Team. So we are there to rescue firefighters. That is our job. So we cannot communicate that. We cannot communicate with them on the way to the call until they get close enough that they can see the call. So the problem with that is that we cannot be diverted. We cannot get updates to conditions changing. So it's a huge issue. And I'm also the EMA director in Old Orchard. So I also take the spin on that, is that as we see more and more natural emergencies, weather emergencies, that interoperability becomes even more concerning, because a lot of the stuff that we ask for comes from York County EMA. So they could be from anywhere. So we need to be able to speak to everyone, and at this point we cannot.
And if I may, this map illustrates kind of what we were talking about, the different systems that are currently in operation in our region that we respond to on a regular basis. And if you could see Old Orchard, Scarborough, and Saco, which rumor is Saco is trending towards the Biddeford, to work with Biddeford on theirs. But we will eventually become an island essentially where we can't operate with any of the other ones that are touching our landlines.
Yeah, so here's the map of Old Orchard and same color scheme. So the white is great for large in building coverage, orange good for residential, blue is decent coverage on the road, on the street, and gray is little to no coverage. Old Orchard is a little bit better off. They don't have as much gray on the screen as Scarborough. But the pieces to highlight here are on the East Grand Ave side where the high rises are and the condos. It's in-street coverage and at best some residential coverage, certainly not industrial type high-rise coverage with the concrete and steel and the bricks. So they're certainly lacking in that area.
I can speak for, we can respond out to East Grand Avenue and I can be on the second floor looking out the window and see my deputy and we cannot talk to each other. I have to go out on the balcony or I have to go back down to the first floor and do a face-to-face. It becomes, communication is critical. If I'm outside the condo and I have a crew on the fourth floor and I can't hear what they're telling me and I can't give them any information that's it's dangerous and it's just something that we're dealing with. And this is why we're here talking about changing radio systems. Personal experience, we get dispatched for a call. I get there first. I go in, I was in a parking garage. I have priority information that I have to get out. I needed certain pieces of equipment in the garage with me. I could not get out. They could not hear me. Deputy was in the parking lot. They could not hear me. I had to come out and tell them what I wanted and then we brought the stuff in there. So that's what we're up against. And, you know, and connected to that, you know, we never know that our radios are down until we have repeat call. People are calling in, you know, call on Old Orchard, call on Old Orchard. At some point I say, I bet you the radios are down. So now somebody has to go to the station, go upstairs in the radio room, unplug the piece of equipment, count to 10 and plug it back in again. And that's what we're dealing with.
Annalise Tribe, Police Chief. We have a lot of the same similar problems, but we also have some unique problems that are unique to our town. So I'm going to touch a little bit on those. We don't have the same infrastructure in our town as Scarborough does. It's a little bit different. So we have multiple dead zones where dispatch cannot hear our units. Other areas where our units will be near each other and they can't hear each other at all. This also includes high-risk situations like our traffic stops when we're on the outskirts, calls for service where responders must be able to communicate instantly. When radios fail, they are forced to rely on their cell phone technology, but during critical incidents, there's no time to stop and dial, and the cellular coverage is not always the greatest. Our VHF system that we're working on has only one channel, and there are no additional channels available to expand to. That means we cannot create a second channel for a major incident, a school emergency, or a tactical operation. Everyone is forced onto the same channel, which creates congestion and confusion when clarity is essential. These problems get significantly worse for us in the summertime when our population increases dramatically. The added density creates radio congestion for us, making it even harder for transmissions to get through. More people mean more emergencies in a system that simply cannot keep up with the seasonal demand. We also have reserve officers out there, and that's all they have is a portable radio. We have community service officers, and they rely on just the portable radio. Parking enforcement is in the same situation as well. During large events, like for us, 4th of July is obviously a big event. We rely heavily on mutual aid and often cannot communicate effectively with the agencies that are there to assist us. The upgraded system will solve this by allowing us to create multiple talk groups. So if an immediate issue arises, all responding agencies can communicate clearly without stepping on each other's transmissions. We also face in-building communication failures as well. large structures, as the fire chief spoke about. We have high-rise condos, obviously near the ocean, large motels. We also have issues within our schools and our recreation facility. This is where dependable communication is essential to protect our residents, tourists, students, staff, and our youth programs. There has been issues we have problems with dead zones out on the outskirts, but it also affects our bus transmissions as well. They don't get on the radio. They, knock on wood, they haven't had the, an issue where they have to be on there as frequently. But if they did, it would be awful if we couldn't hear them. So this upgrade will provide more towers, stronger in-building coverage, and a modern digital network that will eliminate, hopefully, all of the dead zones. It will give us true interoperability with our neighboring communities, who rely on us and we rely on them. Seamless communication across town lines is no longer optional. It's essential. This project protects our residents, our schools, our recreation programs, our visitors, and our first responders who depend on reliable communication to keep everyone safe. Thank you.
I think we can skip through this one and that one.
I did have one more point, because I
Yeah,
wasn't
absolutely.
prepared to
Yeah.
answer right away on the interoperability, and I know that
One
you
more
mentioned
guy.
it a little bit on the Biddeford. Interoperability is so important. One of the things that Scarborough has to do when we respond to Portland or South Portland is our crews, as they're responding, getting their gear on, getting ready, they pull a laminated card off the visor and they look, okay, I gotta go and do this to get to this channel in Portland so I can hear them, or South Portland. We're still working through some of the issues with Biddeford to try and figure out how to get on their frequencies the same as Old Orchard. So it's created, we overcome sometimes, but the things that we're doing are not going to be sustainable. They need to be, that's why interoperability is so important. And I think you said it, it's essential. It's not even an option. So thank you for that.
When I served with the state police, we had a digital radio system, much like this one. And since the state police troopers are in and out of different jurisdictions, and we were one of the first agencies to get a radio system like this, it made it difficult to communicate with those neighboring agencies. So we were required to have a secondary radio within our cruisers to monitor all the other channels that were on this other system. VHF, am I right with him? Okay. They don't let me say those acronyms as well. So, but it was problematic. It's not the best way to try to communicate. And likewise, if they try to communicate with us, it was very difficult. So as we've mentioned, you can see that our neighbors are making the upgrades, and just looking to hopefully be able to communicate well with them. I will say that we are we are one of 3 towns that have a complement of officers that serve on our SWAT team. South Portland and Cape Elizabeth, as you can see, have digital systems. So that requires our SWAT team members to have special portable radios in order to be able to communicate when they go to these SWAT calls, whether they're in Scarborough or any of the South Portland or Cape, or in assistance to the city of Portland. So just so you have that tidbit of information. Thank you.
So this slide depicts, there's a couple pictures from each town of the current equipment that we have in use at the moment. And then there's some numbers up there showing really where we're at as far as end of life and what in near end of life. 57% of Scarborough's equipment is at the replacement or beyond replacement expectation. Old Orchard's sitting at about 85%. So between the 2 towns, you're about 60% of the equipment needs to be replaced. The serviceable equipment column there, that's mostly made up of relatively inexpensive and long-lasting equipment like antennas and receivers and message switches and things like that are relatively inexpensive. The equipment that needs to be replaced are the big ticket items, the radios, the repeaters, and things of those nature. with all that said, I know every department that's in this project is doing the best that they can with what we have. It's an old system. We're using existing spare parts. We're using spare radios that we have that we can take the broken one out and put the spare in there. You're replacing old with old. It's a little bit of a Band-Aid, but it gets us through. And we're using our radio vendor to source parts when we need them. Over the past 3 years, I won't get into the details of it, but we've had 7 pretty significant failures of either repeaters or transmitters or other types of systems that we've had to replace to keep the radio system up and running and in the status it is now. All of those have been done in the most budget friendly manner possible, with the expectation that we're going to be looking for this and we're going to be moving off of the system. We're not going to invest hopefully big sums of money into a system that we're going to then, abandon and replace with something new. On top of those, major failures, we've replaced and repaired countless portables and mobile radios as well. One example I give, just last November, the IT department for Scarborough had to put a new power supply system in the public safety building. And as a part of doing that, we needed to power down all of the radio infrastructure and then plug it into the new power supply system and then power it back up. Turning it off, that was easy. Turning it on and being confident that it was going to come back on, there was a lot of doubt and a lot of concern there. Due to the system where we were and everything, we brought the radio vendor in to stand by and be on site while we did that work in case something went wrong. So when we powered the system back up, 2 of the radios didn't come back on. No power, no nothing. It turned out to be power supplies, which the radio vendor had on hand. So overall, big scheme of things, it ended up being a fairly quick resolution to that problem. There was a third component that also didn't power back on. That was a primary voter equipment for the fire primary radio. So it just did not turn on. We tried while the radio vendor was trying to source a new part for that because it wasn't the same power supply as the rest of them. We committed to the fact that we were going to try to make that one work, and we hammered on that power button on and off, and eventually something kicked loose and it fired back up. That's not how we want to maintain our systems. It's not how we should be maintaining our systems. But that's what got it back to work. So that's what we did. Our goal here is to move forward and not have to deal with those sorts of problems anymore. You can go to the next one. The next and the last kind of critical issue that we'll talk about with our current system is the dispatch console. This console is what the dispatchers use to communicate with all of the agencies and departments that we serve. It's what we send tones through to activate the fire department. The technology that we're using is from 1987. It's old. We have 5 radio capable stations in the dispatch center. That gives us 1 spare. If one of these consoles fails and goes down, that's a critical outage, and it's out until we can find parts and source replacements. This is somehow it's not end of life. I don't know how. The manufacturer is offering legacy support, but that could come to an end at any time. To make matters worse, the computer that it's operating on is Windows 7. We're on Windows 11 right now. The console software will not operate on a newer version of Windows, so we can't upgrade the computer that it's on to a more modern computer. So we can't connect it to the internet due to security concerns. And again, it's the same story as with the UPS. We're afraid if we power down that computer, it doesn't turn back on, we're going to be in trouble. And we'll be trying to find a Windows 7 computer somewhere that can run our console. You go to the next one.
Just to make one
Yeah,
point,
go ahead.
so, just those bullets that everyone I hope can read, we're the only user in Maine using this software at this point. And there's only, two, I think there were 3 techs that knew how to operate this. One's retired. We're down to 2 techs. So again, we're really at the end of our useful life
Yeah,
here.
yeah, good point. So what do we do? We're at the point now where we can't just keep limping the system along. We have to replace our black and white rabbit ear TV with a modern, high definition 4K, 8K, I don't know, smart TV. Our current system is just like an old TV. It's got static issues, interference, limited channel numbers. Sometimes they come in fuzzy. You don't know what you're going to get. We are recommending, and the recommendation that we've come to is to move to a system that's going to give us crystal clear coverage and unlimited channels. We can, all the streaming services you need, everything you need, all bundled all together. Technical terms, we want to move from a 150 megahertz analog VHS system to an 800 megahertz P25 phase 2 digital simulcast trunk system. That will offer us improved reception throughout both towns and for all departments. It's going to improve in-building residential coverage, and especially in places where it's been historically poor. Significantly better coverage in critical buildings like the schools and the East Grand Ave high rises. And you'll have townwide coverage for all departments. And again, back to the schools, they have a system where now they can generally only talk with each other in the building that they're currently in. They don't have the ability to talk to other schools. So Eight Corners can't talk to Pleasant Hill, et cetera. With this new system, they will be able to do that. So you'll be able to communicate across schools and across the network, and the schools will be able to communicate with the bus department and with public safety. Obviously, that's critical. Should there be an incident in the school or anywhere near the school. In the big picture, as I said, neither town can really communicate across the departments. With a new system, we'll be well positioned when a large incident occurs. And those incidents, they can be natural disasters. We think back to the winter storms from a few years ago, when you need public works and public safety and sanitary district and wastewater, all coordinating efforts and trying to direct resources to the right location. Beyond that, you have potential for mass casualty incidents. You got the railroad track that runs right through both towns. You've got high use roadways with large motor vehicle accidents, things like that, school incidents, anything like that where interoperability between the departments is critical. And even those are the unpredictable, those low frequency, high risk type calls. But we also deal with the things we know about. Summerfest every year in Scarborough, the road races in Old Orchard, 4th of July in both towns. These are things that will be communication between departments will be much improved with this new system. So how does this look? You can go to the next one. How does this look? How do we make this happen? The analogy that Liam came up with here, which I appreciate, is that of a highway system. We think of it like an 8-lane highway, where each lane is a radio frequency. Our system now is a traditional system where you stay in your lane, in your frequency, and you don't move from that frequency. Nobody else can come into your lane. You're stuck in that spot, and you travel along that path. And there's no way to expand, like Chief Chard said. There's no expansion capability here. You're in your lane. That's it. With this trunk system, we're moving to a system where we are able to share the lanes, and the lanes are equivalent to talk paths. They're kind of like the frequencies. They're kind of like they're like lanes of travel. And the system can handle more than hundreds of different talk paths or cars in this example on the travel line. As long as not everyone is literally keying up at the exact same time, the system can handle an unlimited number of talk groups and an unlimited number of users. It's expandable to beyond where we can even comprehend. The bottom line here is that instead of the days where you're in the lane and that's your lane, you own it. Here you don't own a lane. You use it for the few seconds that you need it, and then you return it back to the community of departments that make up the system. So what we're looking to do here is bring 2 counties, 2 towns, 12 departments into a unified regional system, where it's easy to grow, easy to expand, and if we ever need to add another department into that, or a department needs to expand, we just build a new talk group. The infrastructure is already there. We don't have to go back and do this again. It's very easy to upgrade and customize. So the recommended system has 7 sites. 6 of those are in Scarborough and one's in Old Orchard. The system does recommend, the recommended system does involve constructing new towers in both towns. The Scarborough Public Safety Building is an existing tower that'll be used. The Dunstan Fire Station and North Scarborough Fire Stations currently have smaller antennas that will be replaced with full tower infrastructure. The Black Point Fire Station and the Springbrook Park have monopoles that would be replaced with towers. Maine Medical Center is a rooftop antenna that would be remain as it is, but just upgraded. And then in Old Orchard, you'd be looking to build a new tower at the Public Works facility. A big important note here, back towards the beginning of the presentation, we talked about how we currently have a 1 transmit and 6 and multiple receive system. Now we're transitioning to where all the sites will both transmit and receive. So the efficiency of the system is magnified by 7 here.
Excuse me, Jay.
Yes.
The requirement for all these towers is because of what you described of the shorter wavelengths?
So it's a combination of factors. So right now we have a 13 site system and we're going down to 7. So we're also looking to travel further with the sites that we have. So getting up above those trees and like Springbrook Park, for example, right now we have that monopole there. The antenna that we're using is mounted on the shed. It's not utilizing the monopole there at all. So getting that extra height above the trees is really what we're looking for.
Thanks.
Thanks, Simon.
Yes.
I don't want to, this is the solution that we've identified that we're also obviously talking about right here. Just because this is no small deal. Towers are not popular. 180-foot tower is what we have right now in front of the public safety building. It's not a short tower. That's going to require a whole bunch of public process to understand that, because that's not going to be popular. When we get to the cost component, this is also a big reason why the cost is going to be so significant, is that those towers are expensive. So just because we're glossing over it with one slide, it's one of the many challenges to this project.
So this is a map. I won't spend too much time on, but it puts those towers and those sites so you can visually see them where they are in the 2 towns and how they're connected. It's overlaid over an elevation map, so the green is low elevation and the reddish brown color is higher elevation. So the way the system works is it's a bidirectional microwave and fiber connected system. So each site is connected. Well, it's connected by fiber or by microwave, and a portion of them are also connected by fiber. But for the microwave portion, they're connected in 2 directions. So if one site were to lose a connection with another site, so for example, if Dunstan lost connection with North Scarborough, the system would continue on, and the end user wouldn't notice a difference because the the traffic would travel the other direction. If there were a situation where both directions were compromised, like say, for example, if Old Orchard lost connection to both Black Point and Springbrook, then Old Orchard would operate as a single site system. So they would still be able to communicate with each other and still have radio communications in their localized area. They just wouldn't be able to communicate out to the rest of the community and to Scarborough. And then the system is self-healing. So once that problem were resolved, communications would go back to normal as they were. So now we'll get into some maps. These maps have both Scarborough and Old Orchard's coverage on them. Just real quick, the RFP required that 95% of the area covered area should have coverage for a portable on the street on the hip. And we also asked that they guarantee coverage for in building residential. So this first map here is for in-vehicle coverage, and 99.9% of both towns are covered here. Everything is orange. Orange is the good color here, so we're in good shape. The next one, this is going to be our portable on-street coverage, 99.8% coverage. There's a small white spot starting to crop up in the outer Broad Turn Road area. Old Orchard is completely covered. As a comparison, today's coverage, and these are very broad estimates, we're about 85% covered portable on street between the two towns. As we go into a residential building, this is another guaranteed map. The area along the river and the dips out in outer Broad Turn area start to crop up a little bit more. It's important to note at this point, I think that those white areas don't mean zero coverage. They mean it doesn't meet the standard of the RFP. So if we ask for 95% coverage, that could be 94% coverage in those areas, but it doesn't meet the standard of the RFP. So there very likely is coverage there, just not as, it's not guaranteed is the big picture. As comparison, about 65% of both towns are covered today, compared to the 90, what did I say, 98.5. Last one, industrial buildings. These are your concrete buildings, your metal, your brick, your high rises, your bigger than your average house type buildings. Out of Broad Turn Road, again, it expands. Some more white areas crop up around both towns. But the big takeaway here is that for both towns, the high rises, the industrial areas of Scarborough, the schools, they're all orange and they're all in really good shape. And as a comparison again today, so we're looking at 92.8%. Today, we're about 35%. Subscribers. So we've talked about portables and mobiles and other types of radios here. A portable, just quickly, is a handheld portable. It's what the responders carry. It's what the staff carries. It's what they use on a day-to-day basis. A mobile radio is what you'll find in the vehicles and in offices. They're a higher power, larger radio that carries more, able to travel. When you talk out of it, you get more coverage because of the power behind it. The other category in these numbers is generally made up of pagers for the fire department and then some backup radios as well. So the big thing to take away here is that, you know, we've gone to each department and asked them what do they think they're going to need in the new system. These were the initial results that we got back from them. We're working with each department to finalize these numbers and hone them in and get them to more accurate figures. As an example of that, we've been working with the school department for both towns, and they initially requested fairly high numbers for portables to replace what they currently have in their stock and to be able to prepare for the future. both school departments have already come up with dramatically or significant reductions in these numbers. So they won't be anywhere near what's on the screen there today. The reason being is that they don't need as nearly this many public safety rated radios. They don't need all of their radios to be able to communicate with public safety. A lot of them are just to go staff to staff in very short range areas. The reason why we didn't include those numbers here is just because those changes will undoubtedly affect the cost, and we just don't know in what way. It will be positive. It's going to reduce the cost. We don't know how much because there's a lot of factors at play there. So we kept the numbers the same here, so that to make sure we're accurate with the pricing here on the next slide.
This is me. I get to be the bearer of good news. So just to pick up where Jay left off. So this pricing right now is the solution that we just went over. So as you saw, it largely solves the concerns with coverage. It solves the concerns around interoperability, concerns with mutual aid. I mean, this is a very comprehensive, and the cost is fitting for it. You know, the things that are still, which we'll get to, there are some things that will be decision points that will have an impact on the cost. Again, as Jay said, how many devices we need, there's clearly a relationship there. Including also one thing that we didn't go into detail here for the purposes of this one, but the Springbrook Tower is going to be a decision point. The cost of that tower alone is over $1 million, which is not insignificant any way you cut it. And the general coverage that by removing that tower doesn't decrease so significantly that we don't think it's worth discussing and considering. So there are some decision points that will impact this. In terms of the cost breakdown between or sharing between Scarborough and Old Orchard as proposed, there is quite a lot of detail behind the scenes of how we came up with these figures, which obviously will be part of the whole discussion point. But generally, you know, if there was hardware infrastructure solely located in Old Orchard, that was attributed to Old Orchard, solely located in Scarborough, fully Scarborough. There are some things that, again, there was a different ratio there, and then some others fell back to sort of the general ratio between our shared dispatch services now, which is a 85-15 split. Is that right? 73-27. Gotcha. All right. 73-27 split. So that's how we kind of broke that down for the purposes of this estimate. In addition to the infrastructure and subscribers, we're building in a contingency. Again, that there is some flexibility to that. We know the perils of underestimating contingency to get the project done, but this is sort of a combination of between what our consultant recommended and what our general IT practice is. So there's some flexibility there. Again, it's a significant investment. There's no getting around it. In order to move forward with this is going to require, and I guess we'll talk about the next steps, going to require not only support for both elected bodies, but ultimately both voters, both sets of voters in both communities. So that's a pretty significant ask. So as I said, you know, Springbrook Tower site, 1.2 million. Annual maintenance is going to be another cost. We're not looking to shy away from that. That's going to be a significant investment on the operational budget to maintain all of this new age software, technology, devices. I think that we would propose anyway to include some guarantees and warranties and service agreements that largely cover us without any surprises or unexpected costs. There's a cost associated with that. And again, just to touch on the subscriber counts, these radios by themselves are many thousands of dollars each. So bringing that down certainly would bring down the overall cost. With that said, there's some volume discounts there so it's not a one for one. So those are things that are still very much being considered and are worthy of additional consideration. If we were to move forward, this would be the timeline. You know, on the Scarborough side, we go through our budget process in April. We start it. The council approves the budget in May. Presuming this is included in the capital plan, it would likely be contingent also on our school budget referendum. We'd do a public education campaign, if it had support of both councils, and it would go to referendum in Old Orchard and Scarborough in November. Even with all of this, we're not looking at a system cutover until October of 2028. So this is the ideal timeline in the event there's support for the solution. And for those keeping count, that's about a 4.5-year process from start to finish. I mean, this is not a quick process. It's a lot of time and energy that's gone into it. So that's, just to make some final points, I apologize for the technical difficulties. I'll make sure that we share out this presentation before the end of business tomorrow so everyone can access those links. Old Orchard Beach, we also included links to hear what your radio traffic experience is like right now. So we encourage you to do that. Scarborough does have a webpage up that will include this presentation as well as some additional information. And I think at this point, we want you to come away understanding kind of what the challenges are. Some of them are not of our own making, the decision not to upgrade to a system earlier. I think that was us really being cost conscious. And in Scarborough, we have a lot of competing priorities. Some of it is outside of our control. I mean, the increase in VHF traffic and the degradation to the quality that's outside of our control. And so all of these things have kind of come about now. And I think we really need to come up with a solution. And none of them are good options and none of them are cheap. So.
Well, thank you for the presentation and all the great information. We have about 20-ish minutes until we'll need to kind of break up and get ready for our regular business meeting here with the council.
I have one question.
But I want to make sure absolutely, we're going to open it up to questions, comments, whatever. So.
Go. Is there any plan to have like a permanent technician on staff that's available to troubleshoot immediately if we have an issue down at the beach with the system itself?
Before I kick it over to the real answer, I think I think one of the things with the maintenance package that we would propose would include that 24/7 support for all infrastructure and hardware. Is that a fair answer?
Yes, ultimately that's what we'd like to get out of the maintenance package, is that we make a phone call and somebody shows up within a certain period of time and takes care of the problem for us.
Just to kind of follow up on that, how many different vendors do you think there are? Is this a handful of people? Is it dozens of people? So in other words, when something breaks down, is it Motorola, or is it how many different companies are supplying the antennas, for instance, are obviously not, the maintenance on them is not going to be the Motorola guy.
Yep.
Maybe it is, I don't know that, but I bet you that's a special field all on its own.
So yeah, it's a great question. So what we've done to date is we've actually gone out to, we've done a formal RFP process.
Yeah.
We got 3 bids back. One did not meet the requirements of the RFP. 2 others did. We went with the most comprehensive, and it also had to be the low bidder. So the recommendation would be to go with a vendor called EF Johnson, which has good experience in the state. They're located out of Texas, but there's lots of, so we've already selected or would recommend a vendor. We haven't made formal intent to award, but we have done that process to understand who the players are that are out there.
You call that one vendor for anything that goes wrong? Or I guess that's what I'm asking. Or do you have multiple people that you have to call for different situations?
So as far as the radio system itself, it would be one vendor. So EF Johnson would work with a local radio shop, and so that we would call that shop and they would be the ones who would coordinate whether it's a tower, right? So it would be one call, and then they would coordinate who needs to respond. But there may be, like you said, the tower companies may be separate from the ones handling the radio, but that would be handled on their end.
I guess I'll ask a question right down the line here. So like you mentioned, it looks like we kind of waited a little bit longer than the surrounding communities. Are we at the point where there's newer tech coming down? And I don't know which side to ask this to, but is there newer tech coming down the line where if we wait another year or so, this is now obsolete, and then the other towns around us will be changing, and then we're going to have to change again? Or
so I think you're on the right track with that. I think that may be part of the reason why we waited to see if there was technology coming around. You think about cellular, about where that's at with FirstNet and things of those along those lines. Our consultant and from all our research and everything we put into it, that sort of cellular is the next thing, and that's probably another 10 to 15 years away. So we can't wait that long for sure. And, you know, maybe that's the next one we're talking about in 20 something years.
This is certainly the low end of the budget, but on the ongoing maintenance, I think that's a great point. Are we carrying a number right now for the current system where we're saying this would be 500,000 for an annual maintenance and upgrade cost, I assume? And I'm just trying to knock a little bit off it where if we're already carrying 200,000, it's only a lesser increase than that.
Joe, do you want to tackle that one?
So I can't speak for Old Orchard, but I know in Scarborough combined between the police and fire department, it's less than $20,000.
Okay.
Just to add in, Tom, I mean, one of the things that we're talking about with a maintenance plan is it's everything, you know, it replaces all the equipment, no questions asked. There's really nothing available right now with our current system because there's nothing sitting on a shelf somewhere that's not 10 and 15 years old. So it's just not an option. And so that's really the part of the reason why it's such a low figure in our current budget.
And to speak to that as well, we've attempted that, myself and the fire chief, and Jay, when he was in his previous role as the data technician, our current vendor of our radio system here, we've reached out to them over the past 5 years on several occasions trying to get into a maintenance contract, and they won't because of the current status of our system. They I mean, they probably would if we pushed them to, but it would be numbers like that because they can't guarantee the work. And they know that there's no value to them as a company because they would be here working on our system every day, which, I mean, they're once a month out
Repair
here
now.
making a major patch or repair now. So we've tried to get into a similar type maintenance plan for our current system, and it's not an option for us.
My only other question is about leasing cell space on these towers. Is that a possibility or even included at all in the plan?
It's certainly, we believe it's a possibility. It's not included in any of the economics that we're laying out here, but I don't think I don't think it's a secret that cell coverage could be improved. Again, Higgins Beach, I know, has some challenges. I think out north Scarborough and Pine Point even, I think, has some real coverage gaps. So we see this as an opportunity to improve cell service as well. And there's some revenue that will inevitably come from that.
I guess I have just one more question, maybe for the chiefs. Have we talked to Biddeford or any of the other towns that went through it in terms of like issues implementing it and issues that they like, because there's going to be issues with any new system, but
Correct.
especially I'm just thinking that first week.
I believe that they have done the due diligence and checking on that.
Yeah, like you said, there's going to be issues, you know, no matter what system we were to go to, and as we get closer to that portion of the process, we rely heavily on their experiences and things to try and minimize our, you know, pinch points. So
Jay, if I may just add to that, talking with our colleagues in Portland and even Biddeford, one of the challenges they had were folks like us who can't talk to them anymore and help them when we go in. So in the transition or the implementation,
It was cutting off
they
another town.
cut off that interoperability where we could not, we were the low hanging fruit
Sure.
essentially, so.
We've actually had to go to Biddeford to do, you know, anything that they've asked us for as far as, you know, going over and assisting them for calls or when they've been short-staffed. And we have to use a portable from them for us to be able to communicate with them. Because our radios, there's no way we can communicate with each other or with their dispatch.
So the issues are not having the system that they have now. for the most part.
And if I could, Jay, you might want to speak to this, Jay. The system is going to be a dual band system, which is going to open up that additional interoperability with others who don't track along with us. That will be able to also have that ability. It's part of the system as a dual band, is to be able to do two different types of radio systems, which we don't currently have that option.
I'm not sure who this question's for. Anybody can jump on it. But when you take a look at the state of Maine, I guess, have we looked as a state at efficiencies of scale? So we're looking to go out and buy a system, you know, with Old Orchard, but are there other towns or cities in the state that are sort of in the same place so that we could kind of band together with folks and go out to bid more with economy of scale?
Joe.
So,
Go for
there, I'd say probably going back to, the time when the state police were spearheading their first digital system. There were attempts to create a statewide system, through state agencies, that were not successful. I think the cost and the scale of a project at a state level is extremely difficult. Right now, there's really no agency with jurisdiction over public safety communications. The federal FCC and licensing and issuing licensing. But to bring everybody on, we see it in the dispatch world, similar with CAD. Our partners in York County have just started down the road of a countywide CAD system, and they're already having specific jurisdictions drop off of that county program already. I think when you start to create something at that scale, there's differences of opinion, differences of geography, differences that cause those systems to break down. I think the state has attempted it, to answer your question, and it was not successful. I think we may be in a position as a municipality to look. I think we've gone as far as we can right now with Old Orchard. Our neighbors to the north in Cumberland County are exploring going to this type of digital system, but have not fully committed. So kind of a hard question to answer, but it has been attempted in the distant past and it was not successful.
I think it comes down probably to, like many things, local control and local resources. I mean, I'm sure there's some economies of scale, but when you're talking about even the tower infrastructure we're talking about for our system, that's going to be required no matter what economies of scale are there. Those are going to be some local costs. So a good question.
One more, just in kind of on the same vein of that, when you look at how many radios to have, is there like an industry standard? Because you were saying like the schools are kind of backing down from that number a little bit, but is there sort of a model that says if you have this, then you need 5? And then you wouldn't be like negotiating with people. It really is, here's the standard.
I don't know if there's really a standard set up, but it's really is case by case. So with the schools in particular, when they gave us their initial number, that was to replace everything that they currently have. They have a lot of marginally inexpensive radios, $400 or $500 radios that staff use to communicate with each other when they're on the recess, when they're around, and those sort of things. We don't need to replace those. There's no reason for us to replace those $400 or $500 radios with $5,000 radios. That's not a sustainable ask. And if we were to do that in this project, it would, the cost would be higher. And then, when those came time to be replaced, they'd be trying to replace them. They would probably end up replacing them with the $400 or $500 ones because they're not going to go out and do that. So I really think it is case by case. You've got to sit down with each department and really hone in on what they need. I mean, for public works, the plow trucks got to have radios. Like that's in bus department, same thing. So that we really are limiting as much as we can what we have in the subscriber list. And I think you need to have some spares. You need to have a few spares here and there so that if something breaks, you can get somebody in somebody's hand, immediately while you wait for the original one to get repaired. But beyond that, we're pretty much looking to get the exact number.
Thank you.
I was gonna have a question, but you answered it. I think what I would say, like what you said, Chief, resonated with me, that communication or dependable communication is essential. And I think that, to me, to your point of like, do we understand the problem? Yes, we have a big problem where we don't have as dependable communication as we should. And so I think this is very important. My questions are probably more questions that I think the Finance Committee would probably take up where, I don't know what's happening in Old Orchard Beach, but we just passed a school bond referendum, so we have big money already hitting our taxpayers come when I'm assuming this would also be bonded. And so that's something that I'm interested in exploring to better understand. Similar to the school, can we tranche this in multiple bonds to kind of split out the cost a little bit? To Larry's question about additional revenue sources and making sure we're bringing that in. And then again, even as we're looking at our budget process for this year and the CIPs, knowing that we just talked about in our last finance committee meeting, how bonding is different now than what we used to do. And so I think all these factors, my biggest concern isn't whether this is the good thing or if we need to do it now. It's really how do we afford it with everything else that we're already planning to spend. And so that's just my concern as this goes forward, is that we have to solve for that. This feels like a good solution. And it seems like even in the solution itself, there's some wiggle room to maybe bring some costs down, which we should certainly explore. But big picture wise, I'm a little bit worried about the impact to our community, even though this is a very important service. And for those schools that we're about to rebuild, it sounds like if we don't have good communication, dependable communication, we're kind of building these fortresses that, are relatively unsafe. So it really does feel like it kind of goes with that to a degree, that we have to be able to explain that to the community. So I learned a lot tonight. Being on the council for 5 years, I wish I didn't learn all of this tonight. Like, I do feel like I appreciate the cost consciousness, but I mean, some of the things I've heard tonight, I would have done this sooner. I would have prioritized this earlier. And so I am a little bit frustrated that this is the first time I'm really kind of getting all this information. I see Karen shaking her head because I think we're just like, again, this is something that I think we should have known about much earlier.
Along those lines, coming from the finance, and I just don't, are other funding options been explored? Like, I remember you saying that the county has funds available for communications or things like that. And so to John's vein, like, this is a tough year for Scarborough. So are there other, like, can we supplement the 10 million that you're asking for? And I don't know if that's been explored or if that's something that.
I can. So Chief Holmquist and I and the chiefs from Old Orchard, we are fully committed to working on any grants that are available. As we all know, the grant scenario in right now is a little bit tough. However, we've already had meetings with congressional and Senate folks to try and find funding through projects like that. We plan to exhaust every available penny that we can to try and take the burden off of both sides of the community. And even with this project moving forward, we've been doing that the best we can initially.
Yeah, I was going to ask that same question, Karen. Good question. I've been following the funding that's been coming back to Maine, and I noticed there was a report this week that said like we were number 2 in the country as far as like per head count and money coming back to the state. And when I started to scroll through the, hundreds of projects that have received funding, there was a lot of funding for like fire and police. A lot of it was rural. It was like Rumford, or it was like, but Susan Collins seemed to be very involved in a lot of that. So I don't know if we've connected with her.
We had connected with her office directly.
Yeah, and just, I think that one of the challenges, is certainly availability of funds. I think right now too, there are certain asks of communities receiving federal funds, which again would be a whole different discussion. I guess I just to respond to the frustration. I mean, I think that for me, I don't want to speak for Tom, but I think we sort of obviously were aware that we had a failing system, and we're really doing our best to piece things together. I think the cost and what was required to bring the system up to a level of effectiveness, I think we were all surprised with. I'd put this in the same bucket as, I can't believe, a concrete culvert costs $1.5 million. I can't believe a new radio system costs $13 million. So I guess, I appreciate this is a council that I think has been asked to support a lot of financial investments in the community. And so I appreciate that frustration, but going back to our opening slide, this is something that we started 2 years ago, and it's taken us this long to go through the process. And even if we move forward, it's still another few years before we have a solution in line. So.
I guess my last question is, what happens if it fails? I mean, I know that somebody said, we have 3 people that know how to work on it. One person's retiring, one person, whatever, and hopefully the third person doesn't get, I don't know, hit by a train or something. But I mean, it's on a serious note. Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty scary place to be. So we're talking about something 3 years down the road that might get implemented if approved. But what happens if in 6 months the whole thing just blows? Like, what's the plan?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think what we currently have, like you said, is unsustainable. We can't keep going this way. The project's critical. It has to be done in one form or another. Chances are we're going to be back in this setting again, asking for something else, and whether it's a different version of what we have now, or a different version of what we're proposing here, there's going to be another significant ask, and it's given more time. I don't know that it's going to be more cost effective either if you're delaying it.
So what's the life expectancy of the system that's being proposed?
About 15 to 20 years.
15 to 20.
And part of the maintenance proposal includes a system refresh at 8 years, where they would come in and basically replace all of the hardware infrastructure, not the portables and not the towers, obviously, but the hardware infrastructure would be replaced after 8 years, which could then extend that even further. That's part of the maintenance portion that was on that slide there. So that's part of that. So that would potentially extend that beyond.
Thank you.
I know we're out of time.
No, go ahead.
Just be quick.
Go ahead.
I take it we're not seeing numbers tonight.
There were some numbers.
There were numbers. I
What's
can go,
Old Orchard's number?
we pull it up.
I noticed it. 3.6 million. That must be why I didn't hear it. That's why I didn't hear it. Okay.
3.2.
3.2. It's okay. You want us to make a decision by March sometime to go into a contract with this? Did I read that right?
Not necessarily. I don't know what Old Orchard Beach's budget process is. I mean, on the Scarborough side, we certainly need the council. We would need the council to support this in our capital plan. That would happen in May on our schedule. I'm not sure. And then if it was supported and included, then it would be subject to voter approval in November.
Yeah.
I just in terms of, again, going back to next steps, we would propose to issue a letter of intent to move forward with the vendor that we went through the RFP process with. However, that does not bind either community to any expense in the interim, but that would be a necessary step to, I think, further refine these figures and a plan to support.
I said apologize for not being close enough. That number right.
Just one real quick, and I'll jump on your question. What happens when it goes to referendum, passes in Scarborough, fails in Old Orchard?
That's what I was thinking as well, or the other way around.
Or either way, yeah.
It's a good question. I think, Joe, do you have the?
So I mean, quite frankly, if it fails in Old Orchard, the way the system's designed, it fails in Old Orchard, passes in Scarborough, Scarborough can move forward. That being said, there would still be cost to Old Orchard Beach, because you would have to tie your existing VHF system into our new system.
So you wouldn't kick us loose?
No, but there would be a cost associated with tying your old system into our new system.
And vice versa, are we able to, we can't operate the system without?
Not at that number.
Okay, but
Yeah,
it's possible,
because-
just the number is the shared.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
of the communications consoles, the core
Sure.
components.
Even when you look at the tower infrastructure, the Black Point Tower and the Dunstan Tower really help outer Old Orchard areas. So if you were to remove those from the project, you guys probably have to build more infrastructure as well.
I wouldn't recommend you spending $3.5 million with just that one tower and losing the other benefits of the Scarborough side of the system. Your coverage would not, the 3 million would not buy adequate coverage. And so it would be better, in my opinion, I would counsel you to hold off and reassess. If you were to pass and we failed.
So just to quickly wrap up, and we are about out of time. I agree. I think we've all learned a lot tonight, both technically and otherwise. And we've got a lot to continue to digest, both technically and, as John alluded to, on the finance side of things. And I think it's fair to say, and again, I can't speak for the Old Orchard Beach's experience, but if we're experiencing sticker shock and it feels new to some of us, it's going to be exponentially the case for our taxpayers and voters, particularly on the heels of other investments that we've committed to. So communication will be critical, kind of in keeping with that theme. That said, it sounds like this is a pressing issue that we can't ignore. We appreciate what our public safety folks have done to kind of do workarounds and kind of MacGyver their way through things as needed, but seconds can make a difference on responses, and we don't want to mess around with that. So with that, there's obviously a lot of work and thought and thinking to do going forward, but thank you all again for coming, and to be continued. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Good evening and welcome to the February 18th, 2026 meeting of the Scarborough Town Council. Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Kristen, could you please call the roll?
Counselor Kane,
Here.
Counselor Shoup,
Here.
Counselor Donovan,
Here.
Counselor Anderson,
Here.
Counselor Hayes,
Here.
and Chair Fellows.
Here. Yes, we'll note for the record that Councilor Doherty is not here. Next item on our agenda is general public comments. This is for anything that is not on our agenda this evening. As always, we just ask that you introduce yourself, state your address, keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Please respect our rules of decorum, be respectful, and try to keep it on topic in terms of items that are under the council's purview. Come on up.
Allison Bristol, Bayview Avenue. Hello, everybody. First of all, I hope I'm always respectful of you guys and your time, because you're much appreciated. Please know that. And I just wanted to make a couple of comments about LD 1829 and the Fix-It 2173. And first, I wanted to thank Autumn for her work on the testimony, Tom and Counselor Kane, and I think Counselor Anderson maybe went up to Augusta twice. And so your time was very much appreciated, and appreciate the testimony, and very proud of Scarborough for standing up for its citizens and pushing back. I spent a little bit of time today actually looking at LD 2173, and it's not all, bad news, in that it seemed to follow what we already do in our rate of growth ordinance, and that the setting the number of permits at 105% of the mean number of total permits issued in the last 10 years is in 2173. We already do that. Well, the copy I had show it as 105, not 130, so maybe I'm wrong about that. But anyway, check it out. Hopefully it'll stay at 105, and I would say keep it that way.
I'll comment on that later.
Yeah, and but it also brings to mind that in our current rate of growth in Section M, the periodic review, that there's a mention that there is a required review during each 3-year period, and our first 3-year period is up the end of June. So I know we have Autumn's report, or her biennial report, I think that was in July of 2025. So I think it's really essential that we set a timeline and get in front of that, so we're not at the end of June and we haven't done that yet. So I'd like to, hopefully see a timeline on that. And because the other piece of it is that with our rate of growth ordinance, it's got the 3 areas, and it designates a certain number of permits in each of the areas. So it's maybe not only the total number of permits that we issue, but how they get relegated. And the LD 2173, again, if I'm reading it correctly, which to me, this was good news, it sets the, it says no less than 35% of allocated permits for a common scheme of development. Our rate of growth ordinance says 50%. So to me, the 35% is good news, in that it might help control growth. It might also prevent developments like None Such that everybody was so upset about, after the fact, if that cap was put on each area. And the other thing that kind of pops off the page to me is
Affordable housing, there's no caps, but with our rate of growth, the Downs gets 400 permits every 3 years, plus they, they can pull from the pool. There's been no affordable housing built in the Downs in the last 3 years. So my question is, how is the council going to address that? Because it's required as a performance standard in their zoning. So, I mean, that needs to be addressed. And if we need affordable housing, that would be the first place to look. Then the other thing, well, Councilor Dougherty's not here. In reviewing our rate of growth ordinance, it already exempts ADUs. So we can have ADUs anywhere in town. The town just has to be zoned to accommodate that, which brings me to my last thing quickly. I think I'm probably way over, but in the LD 2173, it says here, this makes no sense to me, that a municipal ordinance may not require a minimum lot size that exceeds 5,000 square feet and may not require more than 1,250 square feet of a lot area per dwelling unit for the first 4 dwelling units. So again, I look at Higgins Beach, which is 5,000 square foot lots. When Speaker Fecto was here, he said he was going to increase that to 10,000 square foot lots as the minimum, and I'm not seeing that anywhere. And basically what this says is you can build 4 1,250 square foot units on a lot at Higgins Beach and have 0 setbacks. So I think while we're looking at rate of growth and we're looking at zoning, I think we should revisit setbacks in general, because again, you look at Higgins Beach, there are no setbacks anymore, and people are building ADUs, and you can build up to 3 feet to the property line. So anyway, that's all for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room for general public comment?
Good evening.
Good evening.
John Flaherty, Black Point Road. So I'm a graduate of Scarborough High School, George Washington University, and the University of Maine School of Law. And as an attorney, I practiced here in Maine for a number of years, but I haven't been practicing for the last couple. Earlier this month, I unearthed a relic. It was a political yard sign with a picture of my beagle on it that said, "Acadia is begging you. Vote no on December 3rd. Some of you will remember, not all of you were here, that in 2013, as a result of a unprecedented single-issue special election generated as a result of citizens organizing a recall of the council's actions in what many consider to be an anti-dog overhaul of beach ordinances, rules, and fundamentally public access, that single issue special election had the highest voter turnout for a non-November election in Scarborough's history. And the results of that record-setting participation was decisive. Just 27% voted to keep the council's leash law, while an overwhelming 73% voted no to repeal the council's dog and beach access ordinance, about a 3-to-1 margin. And the resulting compromise, that ordinance that the subsequent council passed, was far from what the dog owners were advocating for, but for 13 years we've lived with it. A well-known African proverb that I'm fond of reminds us that if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. As public officials, changing ordinances, creating new restrictions on public access, ending property rights, creating new zoning, really the vast majority of the work that you do as town councilors should never be something that is done fast nor alone. Your work deserves, ethically and legally, it requires more public participation, more public notice, more gathering of actual evidence and data, and making decisions based on that evidence and data. Not rumor, not anecdote, not solely based on the complaints made from a few squeaky wheels. Based on comments made at the last council meeting, it appears that this council has a member who is clearly intent on not just going fast, but willing to go alone. The decisions that you make, especially when it comes to public access, property rights, and these other contentious issues, have ripple effects on residents, visitors, our local economy, and beyond. And there are sides to these issues which are either not being considered or specifically ignored. Neither is acceptable from our elected officials. It's even more incumbent that our leaders are thoughtful, open-minded, patient, and willing to hear all the sides of an issue. More importantly, if you want to go far by affecting lasting policies forged through public participation and difficult compromises, then you cannot go alone and you cannot go fast. We're all better served when we go together. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room before we go online? Okay, thank you.
Denise, you're all set.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Denise Hamilton, Two Rod Road. I just watched the workshop and I echo John and Karen's concerns of being the first time hearing about the failing communication system and looking at the price tag and potentially going to referendum in November. You know, this current council has been talking over the last few months and how they're going to do everything they can to have a zero increase. Not sure how you expect that to happen if you're going to be, you know, putting a $13.5 million communication system to referendum. So I do have concerns because there's other things, you know, obviously we can't wait for the system to fail, you know, because that's obviously not good. But we also have obviously roads in town that need fixing and I think you guys have your work cut out for you for this budget season to figure out how you're gonna fund all these things. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else? Okay, thank you very much. We will close general public comment. Next item on the agenda, the minutes from the February 4th, 2026 Town Council meeting. Have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Item number 6, adjustments to the agenda. There are none. Item number 7, items to be signed, treasurer's warrants. I signed those before the meeting and gave those to the town clerk. And moving on, we go to the town manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll do my best Tom impersonation here. So just to go through some updates, which really continuation of previous manager reports. We're going to start with roadwork projects update. So as many of the councilors here attended, Scotto Hill Road, there was I think a fairly productive discussion during the Councilor Corner Live event last Thursday. By my count, there was approximately 25 residents and councilors and staff present for that discussion. Seems like there's some momentum coalescing around exploring the resilient culvert replacement, but that's obviously contingent on some grant funding and discussions will continue through the budget process. I think one bit of information that was largely new to the attendees was staff had reached out to the agency that has awarded the grant funds necessary to restore the brook to its natural state, and they've agreed to be patient while we work through this process. So I think that was a positive development in terms of exploring options. Moving down to Pine Point, the water main replacement project has started. I beg your pardon, Avenue 3 and 4 are currently underway. They're doing the 2-inch lines before they get into the main lines later on in the spring as weather cooperates. And then Spurwink Road Phase 2, contract documents are in hand. I expect Tom will execute those next week. The goal is to start construction by March 15th and have it wrapped up by June 30th before the peak summer season. So that's helpful, I hope. Legislative matters, I'm sure Councilor Kane specifically will speak to his experience through this process, but the plan was last week for Councilors Kane and Anderson to provide some verbal testimony in addition to the town manager. That proceeding was postponed unexpectedly after many hours of dedicated patience. And my understanding is that that was, did occur yesterday. I know the town manager provided written testimony that was supported and authorized by your meeting on February 4th. And so I know that was provided in his absence. Bond ratings and bond sale results. So just some quick updates here. The town's credit rating by both Moody's and S&P were unchanged from last year. If you recall, the town did receive a credit upgrade from Moody's last year. Both of them are rated investment grade. We did break our bond offerings into essentially 3 segments. There was a initial segment for the dedicated school project funds, necessary to move that forward. There was a second sale of and I'm really going out on a limb here, essentially a bond anticipation note in lieu of a traditional bond. That's sort of a short-term measure before those funds will go to a more traditional tax-exempt bond next year. That was under advisement and guidance from our new bond counsel. And then the third kind of tranche of bond proceeds will go to market tomorrow. Again, I expect Councilor Kane may have something to add to this discussion, but it is of note that the bond offering specifically for the tax exempt school bond was considerably lower than what we had projected as a part of that project. Again, it's a drop in the bucket of the overall cost, but it's certainly a good bellwether for things to come. Automated parking. So this was a request, if you recall, going back to former Councilor Cushing, really suggested that staff should explore automated parking options down at our beaches. That work continues behind the scenes, and our staff's been working to really understand what the costs of moving to that system would be. Obviously, there are some implementation costs in addition to annual costs. So I think that we're primed to bring forward some information for Tom's review in the next few weeks, and then I expect it may come through the Finance Committee or Ordinance Committee. If we do move in that direction, I think there's a number of questions that the council will have to consider, not only the operational costs, but I think looking at fees again, which I know is no one's favorite, but I think it would require us to look at maybe an hourly fee for some of our beaches as opposed to a daily fee as it is now. But again, we'll be prepared to bring forward some concepts for your consideration. Community survey dashboard is up on the town's website. So if you go to our What's Happening page, that's again sort of an interactive tool for people to understand and kind of break down and dissect our survey data. So you can kind of see by geographic area and other components what how people feel about our town. So that's an interactive piece there. Project Grace Fuel Rally was an overwhelming success. We did receive some written summation from Steffi Cox, the Executive Director, thanking the community for all their support. They raised over $32,000, which is really, really significant for the community and goes a long way, particularly with as cold as our winter has been. Tax bills were mailed last week. We did again use this as an opportunity for to share some communication efforts and updates. So those inserts were included in there. FY27 budget. I think that this has been discussed or noted, but unlike the last few years, we will be compressing the presentation and public hearing into the same meeting. That's due to some scheduling constraints around town council. We still think that gives the process more than enough time to be reviewed and considered and dissected, but we did want to note that that was a change from the original schedule. No better day than April Fool's Day, I suppose. Lastly, just a bit of positive information, some staff recognition. Just wanted to note that Officers Taylor Owen and Justin Cook were recognized by the New England chapter of the Mothers Against Drunk Driving for their efforts last year. Each officer is responsible for 10 OUI arrests. So some good proactive work there. And with that, I'll turn it back to the chair.
Thanks, Liam. Not bad. Any questions for Liam? John?
I know we're not supposed to ask questions for things not on the agenda, but since it's Liam's first time, I'm hoping, our second time, I'm hoping we can, no, I'm just kidding. Much better than Tom.
Good. These are recorded. All right. All right. Well, thank you. Great information as always. Moving on to standing and special committee reports and liaison reports. I'm going to start down here with Larry.
Thanks. So with finance, we discussed setting more of an action plan around our council goals, trying to formulate how do we take those from objectives to actually instituting them. And we finalized the budget calendar, which spans over a couple of months, involves the school department and all the staff reviews as well. We reviewed with the town manager and some staff. They weren't at the meeting, but there was a couple of meetings ago here, there was questions around kind of the grant application process for projects in town. And so we tasked Tom with kind of what's the process for that and all. He reported back to finance. It's a pretty thorough process, and the staff is really empowered and encouraged to pursue everything they can find. He felt that they were already doing that, and it was kind of part of the protocol of what they do as they're reviewing projects. I think we all agreed that we didn't need to set any kind of parameter around when it comes to council differently based on dollar amounts or any metric like that. So I think we felt comfortable that as projects were coming along that had grant opportunities, that we were hearing about that through the town manager's report and then also through committee work. So we're leaving that alone. And I think that's it for finance. The school project is getting on its feet with the committee and setting up a plan and a calendar for tracking kind of the progress. We did talk about, from a communications standpoint, kind of using the original SBAC committee's method of setting public forums and the communication plan that they had. We felt like that was really well received in the community. So that's kind of the outline we're going to use for that. They are setting up a dedicated email for questions from the public. And then I'll piggyback on Liam's comment that these bond rates that are I guess the rates that we just sold at were really advantageous for the school project. No way to predict that a year from now, for what rates will be. But the reporting that we got from the finance director and from the manager was that the acceptance of our financial health within the bond ratings community was really strong. And the one, Liam, you can correct me if I got them wrong, but the one tax exempt series that went out priced out at, I think, 2.75 was the rate. And Liam mentioned, because of some IRS rules, we had to change around the structure a little bit. So we had to issue this BAN, as the acronym, as a taxable bond for this year. And then this seems kind of silly, but next year we can reissue the whole thing as tax exempt. It has to do with hitting maximums that you can put under this. It's considered a small issue, and because of what we're doing, it would be a large issue. That's the extent of my understanding. But that I think came in at 3.8 or right. 3.77. Yeah. And so both of those, when we did the modeling for the bonding and the tax cost impact to the community, we use much higher rates than that. And on $130 million projects, a couple of basis points is real money. So that was very encouraging. And then I'll just comment on the process with my first foray into Augusta politics. As there was reference, we went on the 10th. It was myself, the town manager, and Chief Kindelan also went. He was speaking for the Maine Fire Chiefs Association. And we were there all day, and it for what should have started, well, the actual meeting should start at 1. At any rate, they ended up canceling because their general session went late at almost 5 o'clock in the afternoon, where all along they were saying, we're still going. And so that was a waste of a day, except some really quality FaceTime with Tom. Because we all drove up together and all drove back together. And so then I went back yesterday, and Chief Kindle did as well. Counselor Anderson gave submitted written testimony, as well as a few members of the public, which was encouraging. I will say I was kind of disappointed with the progress. I think, made a little bit of a tactical error on my part. When we were originally going that first week, Counselor Anderson and Manager Tom, that sounds like a kid. They were kind of giving a very factual, here's what we want the changes to be. And I was giving more of a narrative around the impacts to the town with some real life examples around what the the change of the rate of ordinance would be and all. And going back yesterday, neither John or Tom could be in person, so I was the only one there in person. And so my narrative really wasn't what the committee wanted to hear. You know, they wanted to know, what are you saying we should change about this law? And I had the extra duty of Autumn had done red line markup, which may be what, and so Autumn was changing the ordinance back to 105, but the current version was 130 from the state committee. So in doing that, I was rushing through my narrative, and then because they had that red line version, they started asking me pretty technical questions around the red line changes that we made, and I didn't feel comfortable, wasn't familiar with that. And so overall, a little bit of a strategy mistake. I think I should have gone, since I was going to be the face of this, and the only opportunity the state committee had to ask a live person about our intentions. I should have gone to just a more factual based, here's what we want to change. But so other than that, I do think we made good progress on the rate of growth ordinance. I'd be shocked if they don't extend the timeline for the effective date, because that came up from almost every speaker. And there was general interest, and they seem to be still open to trying to improve even what they've already written. So thanks for listening to all that. But that's all I got.
Thanks. Yeah.
Great. So the ordinance committee met last week, and you'll see some of our work on our agenda this evening. And then we also spent some time working on short-term rentals, which is going to be coming back to March ordinance. And I want to note now that in March, ordinance committee is meeting at a different time, which is going to be Thursday, March 5th at 5 p.m. instead of the second Wednesday. So I just want to make sure everyone's aware of that. So on our agenda for that meeting is short-term rentals again. We've pretty much kind of narrowed it down. I think we're gonna have a good draft hopefully coming to you guys for next month. And then the traffic safety group didn't come before, so they're gonna be coming with some changes to the traffic ordinance. And then I think we finalized the individual food truck vendors. And so we're gonna try to put that on the agenda as well for March. And that's all I got. Oh, I did have a question though for our communications chair. When I look at the calendar right now, I thought there was a conversation with counselors tomorrow night, but I don't see it on the calendar. I just want to mention that because I was going to go, but. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
No, I'm not at that.
Swap.
Larry and I swapped. Yeah. Yeah. So at the Historical Society.
Yes.
Yes.
So Karen, communication is 5 to 6, and then there's a counselor at 6:30.
You want to just go ahead and give your updates while we're at it? Sure.
Do you mind for this one?
That's fine.
So we do still have it tomorrow. So it's Thursday. It's at the Historical Society Museum building. So that small building behind the Dunston's Fire Station, and it's going to be from 6:30 to 8. And Larry, Karen, and Scott are going to be there for that one. And then public safety is on Saturday, and that's at 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. And that's Michelle, Larry, and Karen. And then Tuesday we have another virtual only that's targeted towards Pine Point. That's from 6 p.m. to 7:30, and Bill and I are scheduled to be at that one. So that's where we are for Counselor Corners, our conversations with counselors. Comms is meeting tomorrow at 5 o'clock for our regular meeting. Again, I think we're going to check in on how mostly how this next round of conversations with counselors have been going. Another thing, just for awareness, I sit on the Cumberland County Finance Committee. Yesterday, the commissioners voted to approve a county budget of 13.53%, which is, more than double what we typically have. Usually it's around 4 to 5%. So that's going to be another impact to the budget this year. I don't know what the precise impact is to Scarborough because of our valuation and how that fluctuates. It may not be as bad, but I know Cape Elizabeth shared, because they ran some numbers in anticipation that for them, who again doesn't grow as much as we do, so they don't have that new value, they're going to see a 1% tax increase from the anticipated surge in county expenses. And so that is primarily due to the loss of federal revenues that the jail used to get as related to ICE. And so because ICE pulled out, that revenue stream is no longer there, and it really helped to subsidize a lot of the jail operations that they're still going to have to do. And so it's going to be a tough year for communities in Cumberland County to absorb that. Transportation meets next Tuesday at 6:30. The focus is going to be on the East Grand Avenue Complete Streets Design Review. So that's the focus there. And then just for awareness, I know I shared an email, but I'm working with Tody on a proclamation for Scarborough's Got Talent to recognize the student that won this year. And hopefully they will be able to attend the March meeting to have the proclamation and do a performance for us.
Great. Thanks, John. Michelle?
Just a couple things I'd add to the counselor conversations. I've had two, I think, since the last meeting. Corey and I just had one Monday night. And I would say overall that we're continuing to hear that people really appreciate the engagement. They appreciate us coming out to their section of town. So I think that that's been really symbolically important to people. And we've actually heard a lot of things very specific to the different sections of town. We've added the one on Saturday, as John mentioned, because people, last time the feedback we got was, for a lot of working folks, coming during the week is hard. So we added a weekend session and some virtual for people that maybe can't get out or drive easily. So I think that a lot of the themes have been the same. It's been, growth, it's been traffic, it's been transportation. But I think overall, at least the one that Corey and I did Monday night, we had a very engaged and very broad and interesting group of topics that we discussed. So it was, I've learned a lot as a new counselor. I feel like it's been a great orientation just, across the whole town, just getting a lot of feedback over a couple of months. So it's been good.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bill?
Messenger.
Okay, thank you. Long-range planning met last Friday, including a couple of new members. It's nice to welcome them. They reviewed the town council goals and had some discussion around some of the implications for the committee there. And Michelle and I gave a little bit of flavor on sort of what was behind those and how that hopefully aligns with staff and committee time. The committee also discussed a mobile food vendor use for individuals as opposed to a mobile food court, which had previously been approved. They gave a generally favorable opinion, so I would expect that will be coming to ordinance and beyond in the coming weeks and months. And then there was a little bit of discussion, or at least kind of table setting, for continuing to revisit and review the zoning map and the zoning definitions, keeping in mind that with LD 1829/2173/ whatever it ends up being, that one way or another there are likely to be some changes there. And based on a summary that Autumn put together, I think I counted between 30 and 35 different ordinances that will need to be updated based on the draft legislation that's out there right now. So something more to look forward to. I also was a guest of Kiwanis Club last Friday, had lunch with them, and was able to talk about our goals and hear from them and answer some questions. So that was a good opportunity. And done, I think, 2 or 3 different conversations with counselors since the last meeting, and would echo what's already been said there. And it's been a good opportunity to talk with folks, among other things, about mostly to hear from people, but also to be able to share some of what what we're working on and what we're hearing from others, things that might not come out during public meetings. So that's been really helpful. So with that, we will move on. We have no resolutions or proclamations at this time. So we'll look forward to next month for that. Public hearings. 11.1, order number 26-017, a 7 p.m. public hearing and action on the new requests for a food handler's license from Jonathan and Olivia Nardell, doing business as the Pastry Pair, located at 33 CV Landing Road, Unit B, and from Double Dog Ventures, doing business as Main Scoop Company, located at 161 Pine Point Road.
Thank you.
And this to the clerk.
So this is just two new licenses. The Pastry Pair has been existing in Scarborough for quite a while. When we started having conversation about fee changes and adding farmers market, it was brought to my attention that this location actually had a kitchen that they were operating in Scarborough, which we didn't realize. So this is to bring them up to compliance. And then Main Scoop Company, they were operating last year for the first season. They have recently sold, so this is a new license for the new owner.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment on this item? Seeing none, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion?
Just on CV Landing, that says Unit B, is that a multi-unit? Is it because that's a single-family residential property, right?
That's something for Deputy Chief Brennan. He looks into all that stuff for us, and he did not have concerns with that, but I do not have the exact answer. I can find out for you.
Yeah, I just didn't know if they did like the zoning board and all that stuff. I was just curious seeing that.
Because it's a new license, we do check with police, fire, codes and planning, tax, and no one had concerns.
Okay.
Okay. Any other discussion or questions? I'll call the vote. All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. There's no old business at this time. Moving on to new business, 13.1. Order number 26-018. First reading and schedule a public hearing and second reading on the proposed amendments to Chapter 415, Development Impact Fee Ordinance. And I believe Karen will be introducing us.
Karen Martin, Scarborough Economic Development Corporation. Tonight we have a revised impact fee ordinance that addresses the school impact fees. Prior to tonight, we've focused on really how the fees schedule was developed and what assumptions we made. That was what your workshop was in December. So that ordinance changes that you have before you keep that same fee schedule that we already discussed. And it does reference adding a technical memorandum that explains how we got from A to Z and all the assumptions that we've made in order to get there. So what you have before you is really revision of Chapter 415, Town of Scarborough Impact Fee Ordinance. And the following things were in the memo. And this is what you're really changing tonight. Number one, there is a section that refers to an inflation adjustment. You don't need that for housing because we did a flat fee across the 30 years to get, if you'll remember, the $52 million, which is what we're aiming at. So it doesn't need to increase in order to get us to that. It's flat for the entire 30 years. The school project that was approved in November is now referenced as an official project that you can spend impact fees on. Section C includes the new schedule. Section D includes a reference that the ordinance schedule should be reviewed every 3 years, but it also says and highlights, should you see something, should the council see something that's changing, like everything that's going on at the state, you don't have to wait for that 3-year period to make some revisions to this. Because after all the work that's going on up there is going to affect what we think is going to happen in terms of a growth and in terms of number of units. And that is at the basis of how this fee was developed, is how many units do we expect? And so we need keep on top of that to understand what's going to happen. And to the extent we think that projection changes, we need to revisit this. And I think at first we talked about an automatic 6-month start to begin with. And when I talked with the town manager, his feeling was when we're going to be done with the new legislation is kind of a moving target. So he didn't feel like we should put the 6-month review in. Just, when everything is done, council can tell us, hey, let's take a look at that and see how we're doing. So it does leave out, there's not an affordable housing exemption, as was requested or as was instructed at the council meeting or the council workshop. It does keep the exemption for senior housing that's already in there. We didn't touch that. We left it alone. So that is deed restricted senior housing. It's not just any housing that has somebody who's 55 and older. It's deed restricted. It does outline an ongoing process, as we just talked about how to review and keep this up. And the technical memorandum that is part of this process needs to be updated at any time you change the ordinance. The state law doesn't require us to put the methodology in the ordinance. I think we did with transportation. We decided, it makes it hard to read at times, so let's keep it to the technical memorandum that documents all of that. As a reminder, the Finance Committee has reviewed the proposed fees, and that's what was forwarded to you during your council workshop in December. And again, while the fees were reviewed, the actual ordinance revisions were not. So that's what you have before you. And those revisions do include that fee schedule. I want to note that the discussion of the council workshop, I think we just talked about this. It did reference that potential 6-month review, but I think we should be good with that if you're comfortable with the way Section D phrases that. And just a note on outreach. When last we met and when last we came before the Finance Committee, we talked about sending out some information to local developers, that have been around doing work in Scarborough. We did do that. We encouraged them to, one, if they've got comments, to give them directly to you. And we did advise them that there's going to be a public hearing at the first meeting in March, and that's where they should really come and talk to you about what they're feeling. I will say that in casual conversation with some of the folks, I can certainly give you a highlight. You may have already received some of these comments. Certainly, there's a general concern about the steep increase that we're talking about. That's a tough situation. Yes, it's increasing, but we have $52 million to make up. And that is one of the other criticisms, I think, or comments that we heard, like, isn't that a lot of money to assign to new growth when there hasn't really been a lot of change in the school population? Well, I will say that I went back to some of the original work on how to implement impact fee ordinances. And one of the simple ways to set the schedule is looking at the difference between what you're building for and what your existing capacity is. So it's that gap, and that's what we measured. And I will tell you that anytime that I can let somebody else do the projection, I am thrilled. We have enough projections as we go, so that one was fairly straightforward, and I grabbed onto that. So that's my comment to those who were questioning why we did it like that. There was also some questions about, could we do this by bedrooms, number of bedrooms, which is one of the things that Councillor Kane talked about when we were in the Finance Committee meeting. We decided at the time to look at the same way we did them before, which is by type of unit. And that was an ability to really compare between the older fees and the new fees. I certainly intend to pull that out. I'll look at the bedrooms. We are still a little bit behind from the federal government on the delivery of the new tranche of data that will help us really update some of the information that we've used before. That's not going to be out until March 4th. So we'll do that and take a look at it and see what's different. So we can certainly address some folks' concerns about that. And, you know, the last thing that was commented to me about is, you know, just a reminder that we do know that once these impact fees are assigned and somebody pays the impact fee, the very next year, they're paying property taxes for the town. So, you know, those early folks in the next few years, they're going to pay a significant impact fee, and then they're going to start paying the bond, you know, because that's the way it works. That's a tough one. I don't have a good answer for that. I've been noodling on that. This is the way the impact fees work, and I will certainly try to figure out if there's anything else that can be done, particularly in these early years for those who are paying a fairly significant impact fee, particularly the single family folks. And so that's about it. I'm happy to answer any questions. Probably more than you wanted to know about impact fees.
Thank you. Before we turn to the council, is there any public comment on this item? Do we have someone online? Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Stannis.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. Wish I could be there in person. It's my first time doing a public comment online, and I miss you guys. But one question that I have, in calculating the ratio of children per unit, it strikes me that it is quite a large difference between the multi-unit and the single family, and I'm wondering when that calculation was made, looking at the suburban Portland area and the multi-units in that area, if you subtracted all of the multi-units that were senior housing. And I ask that because we're not considering senior housing for impact fees at all. So if we're looking at our ratios, we wouldn't want to include senior housing structures in that umbrella ratio that we're using to do our calculation. And I think the issue there is that there isn't a whole lot of multi-units in suburban Portland compared to single family, and a lot of the ones that there are specifically senior housing. And that's certainly going to change. We're seeing more multifamily housing, and I think that's a good thing. But I do wonder if that ratio is skewed because of calculating senior housing into that initial survey, where it shouldn't be calculated. And just to speak, I really feel strongly that the bedroom is a better way to gauge the number of potential students in a new residential dwelling, because here's an example. Let's say a resident wants to put in an ADU, a studio ADU for their parents in their backyard. It's not even a one bedroom, it's just like a studio. It's clearly, not going to be used by a family. They're going to have to pay $11,000 in impact fee for that ADU that might only cost them $50,000. So it's a huge percentage. Now, if a large developer wants to put in a 10-unit luxury condo building with 4-bedroom condos, let's say, they're basically for that entire building for 10 units of 4-bedroom condos, they're having to pay the same impact fee as that backyard ADU. And that strikes me as quite unfair. So just an observation. Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis. I think Karen's going to take a crack at your.
Sure, I may not. Somebody should remind me if I'm missing something. So the way that this works is that we did not take senior housing specifically out of the calculations. They are in there, and what you see is a very low generation of children in the high-density units. So there is some compensation there in terms of that relationship. And what we do is we actually it's probably more information than you want, but we actually go in and isolate the number of children by age group that would be in school, and we assign them based on the census. We create a separate cross-tabulation of students by type of unit. And so that's where we're getting those calculations. And that calculation is really the fundamentals of the relationship between a single family unit and, you know, the other types of units in there. And that's how we got that. You're right that doing it by bedroom can often elicit some different types of percentages and different types of units. Although I did look at the 2024, which is a single year, and we still wind up with, I don't know, I don't even want to say the number. It's very close to what we came up with for the single family units if you're just looking at 3 bedrooms. Again, that's a single year as opposed to the data that we use, which is a 5-year. So it's not perfect, but we're trying to hone in on the impact. And I think there were a couple of other questions in there. So pardon me if somebody else can remember. If not, I'll go back and listen to it and provide you the detailed information. Does anybody else hear a different question? Okay.
Okay, yeah, and we can always pursue it going forward.
Right.
But thank you. Any other public comment?
Hi, Allison, Bristol Bayview Avenue. I can't remember if I stumbled on Finance Committee or maybe the workshop where Karen had that great PowerPoint presentation, and that's the thing that popped off the page to me as well, as why are we not doing this by bedroom? And I wasn't prepared to speak to this tonight, but after that meeting, I was looking at Autumn's revised schedule of impact fees, and I think it was recreation fees are by bedroom. Right? So it's like, it really makes no sense to me at all that school impact fees would be by unit, to the very point that Stan has made. Thank you.
Thank you.
The one thing I wanted to point out is that doing the bedrooms for the recreational fee is easier to make that alignment because you're talking about both adults and children. When you're talking about just isolating, not just children, but a subset of children, that gets more nuanced. And so that's why we're going in and doing that allocation of children by type of unit. Again, we can provide that information shortly after March 4th when that information comes up. But we can provide you with both information. My suggestion is you're going to have a lot of potential updates given what's going to happen in 6 months or 7 months or 4 months. We just don't know. So there's going to be some revisions that need to be done no matter what.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none. Again, this is first reading. We'll be scheduling a public hearing for next month. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Discussion?
Yeah, I just want to thank Karen for all of your hard work and thoughtfulness on this. Again, we have reviewed it multiple times in the Finance Committee. I think we did definitely debate the units versus bedrooms. And I think for me, at the end of the day, it's a little bit of a wash because, you know, what we see actually happening, like when you take different, and I saw this in the school when they were doing their projections, they showed different apartments in Scarborough and how all of those are very, very different. And so it's really looking at the averages to see like what really happens. And I think that's ultimately what Karen did. She looked at historical data to say, what are we seeing? How does that apply here? So I feel confident that at least what we're starting with is good. And then if the council decides in the future moving to units is important. I think we have that path. I think the scenario of the 4-bedroom luxury apartment, I think is like not probably something that would happen very often. And I do think in our GMO, at least the one we have right now, we limit the number of 3 bedrooms for single family and multifamily that are allowed. That would also kind of prevent any sort of like proliferation of these multifamily, like large 4-bedroom condos. So I feel like we have other measures in place that kind of prevent that from happening. So I'm not worried so much that that would happen. But again, with the law, who knows what's going to happen? So I think that that's where the diligence on the council is really going to be there to monitor and see what's happening. So I think for now, this is a good start. The one piece that I may have an amendment at the next council meeting, and so I'm interested in more just hearing people's perspective on, is really about, do we want to have any sort of, and we talked about this at the workshop, but I want to bring it up again, any sort of reduction in fee for affordable projects. And the only reason I think that's important is because if we don't want to see a proliferation of luxury, this can become, again, another barrier for affordable projects to come to Scarborough. And if that's really what we want to see, I think we got to think about these fees and how they impact those projects from coming. And so I don't have a specific thought of like what it should be, but just the theory of, should we be giving some discount to affordable projects is something that I'm still grappling with, and may come forward with an amendment at our next meeting.
Thanks. Michelle, did you have something?
No.
No?
but
Okay.
thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Larry?
John, I might have something on that that didn't occur to me till I was looking at this today. If I remember right, the existing ordinance, the fee for affordable housing unit is $2,800. And if under this, I believe that if a typical affordable housing unit that's a multi-family, multi-apartment building, if it's 10 or more units, now their fee would be $1,139. So it's actually per unit going down if those assumptions I'm making are correct. So if it was some type of affordable, small development, then it would not be less. But under, I think most of the projects we see that come in with a deed restricted or minimum income metric, that under this, I think it would be less actually, if it's 10 or more units.
Good point.
Karen, how are homes built through like Habitat for Humanity? How are those, they're affordable? I know that, the people that, I understand the formula, how that works, but how would that filter through this?
They would not have any discount or exemption. They would, except if they were senior, deeded senior, they would pay the same fees that would be allocated toward what type of unit they were making.
John?
So I think to Larry's point, it seems like the real opportunity maybe is to look at, if it was a single family affordable housing, family affordable housing unit, would we want to add another item or something in there that says it gets 25% reduction from the single family? Because I agree with you, it sounds like the multifamily might be in a better position, but the single family, which again, I think we want to see that too, right? We don't want to just see multifamily apartments for families. We want to see home ownership, smaller houses. I know if Scott were here, I'm sure he would be talking about that. So I think, that's something, again, just to think about for the next meeting, and if that's something the council might want to entertain.
Thanks. Anyone else? No, I appreciate all the work on this as well. And as was noted, I think one of the key quotes was, it's not perfect. I don't know that there is such thing as a perfect instrument when it comes to something like this. But I think it's important to remember, what it is that we're trying to solve for here. And again, going back to our conversations with counselors, that's been a recurring theme. A lot of discussion around the very different assumptions on what the tax impact of the school bond would be for different people. And it depends on not only on your income, but also your time horizon. So for seniors, it could have a disproportionate impact, for example. So I see this as with pretty much all policy that, it's not perfect and there may be things that need to be tweaked if it goes forward. You can always find an example or an outlier where something seems to slip through the cracks, or maybe it doesn't seem quite right. But that's always going to happen. And I think if this goes forward and achieves its objective overall, I'll consider it a success. I appreciate the discussion around affordable housing and look forward to kind of seeing how that might evolve going forward. As I think I've said before, to me, whether it's capital A or lowercase affordable housing, particularly with ownership, whether it's single family ownership or multifamily, there's undeniably going to be an impact at the front end, and the cost is going to get passed along to the buyer. And I appreciate the comments and the sensitivity to kind of the negative double dip that some people will experience with that. But I think all in all, it's more palatable. I think it's more absorbable at the front end when it can be rolled into, it can be capitalized, it can be financed, as opposed to something that's recurring year over year. So again, I appreciate the work on it. We'll look forward to the public hearing. With that, for
Corey,
the vote.
sorry, one thing I'd add, at the group that we met with Monday night, we were talking about housing and growth, and just, there were good questions around how do we define all these things? So I think one of my takeaways that I put in our notes was almost, we need to have some discussion, because they're like, is that workforce housing? Is it senior housing? Is it affordable housing? Are we subsidized? So there was just a lot of, and there is a lot of confusion, I think, in general out there about terminology. So I think we'll have some discussions around that. And how are we defining it?
Absolutely, yeah. And when it comes to potential carve-outs from ordinances and things, or funding incentives or whatever, there need to be clear definitions. So definitely. With that, if there's no more discussion, I will call the vote. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. All right. Item number 13.2, order number 26-019, act on the appointment of Deanne Vale as the new tax assessor for the town of Scarborough. Well, do I have enough? Okay. Printed my agenda too soon. Yes. I apologize. Which one? All right, thanks for bearing with me. Okay. Thanks for that. Order number 26-019, first reading and schedule a public hearing and second reading on the proposed amendments to Chapter 1018 Cannabis Establishment Licensing Ordinance. Liam?
Thank you. So just background on this. In July of 2024, the council made some revisions to the cannabis ordinance, specifically around odor complaints and verifying odor complaints. In brief, the process that was adopted was that after 5 verified odor complaints, the license or registration would be remanded back to the town council for a suspension or revocation hearing. The proposal before you is to reduce that threshold from 5 to 2. And again, this is really couched within the challenge of verifying these complaints. So in the memo, it references that in the last over a year and a half, there's been 15 odor complaints filed. All of them have been confirmed, but they haven't been verified. And the distinction there is that a responding, in this case, patrol officer, went to the site of the report. They verified that there was cannabis odor that they could detect. What they couldn't ascertain or determine is where that was coming from. And so this is intended to lower that threshold necessary to bring that business owner back to the council for a conversation about an issue.
Thanks. Do we have public comment on this item?
I think the lighting's doing a number to my eyes, so bear with me. Paula Corbeau O'Brien, Pondview Drive. Our property on Pondview Drive directly abuts 3 Commercial Road. This cannabis place is located 50 feet from our property line and 150 feet from our home, as the pictures will show. When we built our home in 1985, pot was illegal, so there was no reason to think that this would be a problem in our future. When we got notice that they were going in behind us, we didn't object because, as we've said right along publicly, we didn't care what they did inside the building. We should, however, like anyone else who calls Scarborough their home, we should be able to enjoy ours where we've lived for 41 years and worked hard for. We should be able to open our windows without a skunky smell permeating our home, yard, and garage. Our granddaughter should be able to play outside when she visits. This pungent smell is negatively impacting our quality of life and the value of our home. It's also embarrassing when we have family or friends over, or even a delivery of some kind, to have to explain to them that no, it's not coming from us, but it's coming from the pot building out back. We can't believe that with 17 cultivators in this town, the only one that is still an odor problem is the one behind us. We are thankful for the time, effort, and concern that past town councils, the current town council, town staff, and Scarborough Police Department have put in trying to resolve this. Since the summer of 2023, we've been experiencing this strong, skunky smell. Yes, it has been differing times of the year depending on where they are in the growth process. We've complained by computer submission or by calling many times over the almost last 3 years. There also are many, many times that we have not called because we know for a fact that the Scarborough Police Department has better things to do than trot down to our way every time we smell it. The last verified complaint may have been August 20th, 25, but there were also more calls after that. Some they could respond to, and some obviously they were busy with other things. And many times we didn't call for faint smell. Even a faint smell is too much. While it may be challenging to find the source, the ordinance clearly says that if the odor goes beyond the grower's property line, it's a violation. Now, I'd like to clarify a couple of points made by Attorney Cohen in her 6-minute presentation to the Ordinance Committee a week ago. She stated that number 4 commercial had been operating since 2016 and that number 3 commercial had been operating since 2013. We do believe this to be true. In all that time, we never smelled anything. The information she left out was that in August of 2022, a different cannabis business started occupying building number 3 commercial, Coastal Remedies, with the strong odors from that business starting in the summer of 2023. Also, what I found fascinating about her description of a wind tunnel was the fact that she knows there is an odor problem and seemingly where it travels, but didn't want to blame number 3 or number 4 commercial. But at the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting and findings of fact with the Zoning Board of Appeals, her and her client did just that. They blamed number 4 to get the 3rd verified complaint against number 3 in January of 2025 overturned. My husband and I don't for a minute think the odor is coming from number 4 at all, and due to all the years they've been operating compared to this new grower at number 3. Attorney Cohen also stated, we're only talking about 11 days out of 365. No, we're not. There are many times, don't forget, that we haven't called. And even if it were 11 days, how long would you want to smell a skunky odor in your yard or in your house? How long do you like smelling it after you hit a skunk with your car or drive by one? She also told the Ordinance Committee, give it time, it'll work. Well, we've been saying from the very beginning that we weren't looking to put anyone out of business, but this is going on 3 years now. How much time does she think we should give? Enough is enough. We are in favor of the 2 verified complaints ordinance. It's not our fault if they don't want to spend the money at this point for decent filtration and risk losing their license. My neighbor also sent me a message and said that he sent an email to the council and he'd like it added to the records.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment?
Good evening, Timothy O'Brien, also 20 Pondview Drive. Just to reiterate one point that my wife made, we have had cannabis businesses out behind us in a commercial zone since 2013, somewhere back around there. We had no idea they were there. We never had any problem with any of those. The problems arose when Coastal Remedies started operating. Just a couple points I'd like to make about some comments that this attorney for the business said at the ordinance committee. She said at one point there were 12 complaints made for this for the odor problem, and 11 of them came from the same people, basically. We've never hid behind the fact that we're the ones calling, for one thing. She also said, after she said that, she said, I don't mean anything by this. Well, I don't say anything unless I mean something, but maybe it's just me. Okay. So, and then she brings up this wind tunnel nonsense where I don't know where that came from. And what difference does it make if there's a wind tunnel there or not? The fact remains, the problem is the odor. It doesn't matter whether there's a wind tunnel or not. Okay. And then at the March of 2025 Zoning Board of Appeals meeting, the owner of Coastal Remedies publicly stated that he's not going to spend any more money to fix this problem. Okay, and then he, in that same meeting, he blamed number 4 for problems. The attorney has blamed number 4 for problems, which fascinates me because he's the attorney for both places. If I was number 4, that wouldn't go too well with me. Okay, but our patience and our goodwill vanished when he made the statement about that he's not going to spend any more money. Okay, and then okay, maybe number 4 is a problem, and if it turns out that it is, then maybe both these businesses should be cited from this point on. And as my wife said, from the beginning, we've never said we want to see anybody go out of business. But if that's the result of this, then so be it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, seeing no more. Thank you very much for those thoughtful comments. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
All right. Council discussion, Karen?
Sure. So it's been a long road with the ordinance, and I think this originally started because of smell complaints going on more in Pine Point. And I think kind of what we've discovered over this process over the last year is that you can solve your odor problems. And I think Pine Point showed that to us, that they were able to do whatever they did and that we have experienced 0 smells. And I think that was part of the determining factor, at least for me, when we came before ordinance, was what's the difference between 3 and 2? We had 0 people coming from this industry showing up at ordinance saying, don't do this, because ultimately creating smell is hurting their business in Scarborough. And so I think, we're not hearing from them because there's not a problem with this business, with us doing this. This is us trying to sadly fix a very direct problem that we have. And so, I think at first we'd said, let's go down to 3 strikes. I think if you watch the ordinance committee, I think we all felt really comfortable going down to 2 because we really feel like this industry has the capacity to create no smells whatsoever. And so I think, considering what these residents have gone through, and we did get an email from your neighbor Shane as well, that going down to 2, the police already got 4, if not 6, but they didn't end up being verified complaints. I think we'll be able to kind of deal with any problem business in town that has this, because we know that there's a solution. So I obviously support this.
Thank you. Anyone else? Bill?
Yeah, I'm very sympathetic to the situation. This is absolutely inappropriate. Residential neighborhood. You have no expectation
that a neighboring property is going to be disruptive of your daily life. And I completely agree with what they're saying, and I'm very supportive of the council's effort to go from 5 to 3 down to 2. I think that if this continues, I think they should be in front of us. And let's get some explanations for why they can't get their act together.
Yeah, everything Bill said times 10. And I think I go down to Pine Point and walk the beach a lot. And I remember exactly when that pungent smell started, because I was driving and I had my sunroof open. It's like in a good mood. And I'm like, oh my God. And as Karen said, they resolved that issue. And also gone to Paula's to pick up something, and I literally pulled into her driveway and wasn't even out of the car, and I was like, what is going on? And so I asked her, and she told me. And I agree with Bill. I feel like, 3 strikes and you're out. They've had 2.5 years to rectify the situation. There is a solution, as Karen stated, and it's a neighborhood. And I feel like we should be worried about the people that live there and invested in a neighborhood and a life that they can enjoy, and not feel like they're prisoners in their own home because they can't go out and sit in their backyard because of this. And I also feel like there's been it sounds like cordial and respectful, dialogue at the beginning and conversation, and it feels like that isn't being reciprocated by their attorney and by the owner of the business. So I 100% support everything that Karen and Bill said.
Thanks. John?
Yeah, I think I'm trying to recall why the heck we ever agreed to 5 strikes to start. Like, that's a lot. And I know at the time I was like, I don't think it should be 5. I think it should be 3. And somehow we ended up with 5. So it is what it is. But, like you said, 3 strikes is like typically what you think. But I think, to Karen's point and to Bill's point and Michelle as well, like, this is fixable, and even having any strikes, I feel like, is giving any leniency. So I think going from 5 to 2 is reasonable. And again, I just think so much about Pine Point, like you said, and how that was really the impetus for a lot of years of work. I think we went through multiple moratoriums. So I think this is an appropriate adjustment to say, we know that, especially in that building in Pine Point, that is like old, porous, that they've been able to solve it. I think the building that I'm seeing here looks like newer, more modern. So there's really no excuse except for, somebody not doing the best they can to manage their business. And so if that's the case, I think we need to be thoughtful. I also think the importance of this going from 5 to 2 is really important for our public safety professionals, because the challenge, which I believe is part of the challenge, was, as Liam said, you can confirm, but you can't verify. So if there's 2 places together, or if there's a building like the one in Pine Point that has multiple tenants in there, like, pinpointing the specific person requires either significant investment in technology or significant training that is really going above and beyond what our public safety professionals should be doing. So I do think we have to weigh that in as well, and make sure, as Paula mentioned, like, they have other things that they need to be focusing on. And so hopefully by making it smaller, when they do have to go and confirm, they spend a little bit more time knowing that, like, the bar is a little bit stricter, so that they can hopefully really try and find it, as opposed to get called multiple times. So again, I just think this makes total sense. And, I really hope that the business owner that is the problem, because I really feel like this is coming to us because of a specific business owner, that they pay attention and fix it. Because I do think, I don't want to kick a business owner out of the building, but if they're not complying and if they're disrupting, the public and the families that live in the neighborhood, like, we need to hold them accountable.
Thank you. Larry?
Yeah, I'm supportive of this as well for all the reasons. And I think the logic behind that 10+ operators have figured out how to solve this. And it appears as though 1 or maybe 2, depending on how you look at it, haven't. And the public comment that he potentially said, I'm not spending more money on this, that really put me off. Now, granted, I know that's not any testimony or anything, but I just think it's I don't know if I could say easily, it's solvable and been proven to be solvable. So I don't know why we should try to make it more lenient. I do have one technical question. It says 2 violations within the license or registration period. So I wanted to ask the town clerk, is that annual by calendar or renewal by the anniversary?
It's September 1st through August 31st.
Okay, thank you. And so if there's already violations against anybody, but the particular problem site, how are we counting those towards this 2 limit? Is it from here forward? And if so, I think we need to put a date in there that's saying as of this date. And maybe there aren't any verified in this period and we don't have to worry about it.
I don't believe there are any verified in this period, this current license period. And I think that that's, again, if they meet whatever the threshold is, whether it's 5 strikes or 2 strikes, it brings the license owner or registration owner back to you, and perhaps that's something you take into consideration or not. But it's not an automatic revocation or suspension.
Karen, I have a question for you. Is there a way that we can require anybody coming forward to obtain a new license to grow to have a filtration system so that this doesn't become an issue again? So it's a precursor to them even being given a license.
Oh, yeah, I mean, that's just the standards, right? Yeah, Liam, that's more of a Liam.
So there are actually some very specific standards for odor mitigation equipment that has to be not only in your initial application, but in your renewal. Very specific. It's informed by an odor consultant we contracted with probably 4 or 5 years ago. The other thing I'd say is that another change that the council made in response to the concerns with the proximity between cannabis cultivation establishments and residential neighborhoods is now you can't have a licensed operation within 1,000 feet of a residential dwelling. So the establishments that have been the subject of concern have some legacy use rights right now. But that's also through attrition. Some of those spaces are actually falling away. An example is 20 Snow Canning Road. That's a building that had previously 3 suites for cannabis cultivation, and one of those has since fallen away because it was not licensed for more than 12 months. So it is a long-term vision of having those things cycle out with a responsible buffer, I think. Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, I support this as well. I appreciate the comments about not wanting to put anybody out of business. And as John said, I think the same goes for the council. And I suspect, even though I wasn't on the council when this was first put into effect, that was part of the spirit of this, was to, recognize that there might be some kinks to work out, and we want to err on the side of allowing for illegal business. But that said, obviously, this has been a recurring problem here. And while the most critical consideration is the neighbors in the residential area, I think it should also be noted, in addition to what John said about public safety, which is a good point, that other town staff, notably Liam, have spent a lot of time helping to respond to these complaints over the last few years and trying to facilitate things. So I think that's another, again, it's not the primary benefit of this, but I think it's another reason to support this. So with that, I will call the vote. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you. Next item, order number 26-020, first reading and schedule a second reading to amend order number 25-115, adopted by the Town Council on December 17th, 2025, the original order. Being hereby is amended by replacing the original school project with the replacement school project as noted in the supporting documentation. I believe Liam will handle this. Thank you.
Thank you. So the background on this is, again, this is kind of another product of changing bond councils, is that they're quite meticulous in their review, and they noted an inconsistency between the town's bond order and what was reflected in the capital plan and on the bond issuance. And so this is really just cleanup language. It doesn't change the amount to be bonded. It's simply replacing for continuity. Again, it's characterized here as a Scribner's error, but replaces interior construction and renovation for our 2022-23 school CIP item to district-wide energy improvements again. So it's consistent across all of those documents. So it's just an edit there, no other change.
Thanks, Liam. Any public comment on this? Does not appear so. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Right, any discussion? All right, appreciate that explanation again. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Order number 26-021, act on the request from the town manager to rescind action taken on order number 25-120 and designate all snowmobile refund monies that the town receives from the state of Maine to the Saco Pathfinders Snowmobile Club to help maintain trails located within Scarborough. Liam.
Again, there's been some previous discussion on this. If you recall, the original order requested to stop allocating these funds to the Snowmobile Club. When that action was contemplated by the council, or actually approved by the council, there's some subsequent discussion and outreach by the Snowmobile Club to correct the misconception that there are no longer Scarborough trails to be maintained. So there seemed to be general support by the council to rescind this order.
Great. Any public comment on this one? Seeing none, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Any further council discussion?
I just want to say that I really respect all the folks that came and spoke to this, and I really liked a lot of the younger, I guess, children, but they were like young adults that talked about their experiences, and I just found it very moving. And I also appreciate that we were able to step back and say, you know what, we didn't have all the information. We didn't realize that the trails were still being used. It was 17% of their budget. It wasn't a big hit for us. And that we kind of retrenched and I think made a really great decision.
Thanks.
Ditto.
There. Okay, great.
That is what I was going to say.
Yeah. Same here. Any other comments, questions? All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. And now order number 26-022, act on the appointment of Deanne Vale as the new tax assessor for the town of Scarborough.
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as has been noted through previous town manager reports, we have recommended and hired, extended an offer to Deanne Vale. Currently, Deanne is the tax assessor of the city of Biddeford. She's been with the assessing office there for about 4 years. Prior to that, she had some really, I think, really valuable experience with the Maine Revenue Service, specifically around auditing municipal valuations and actually administering TIF programs. And prior to that, she had some experience with the city of, or the town of Bar Harbor. So we didn't have a terribly expansive pool, but we had a fairly deep pool, and we had two excellent finalists. And we thought, in consultation with not only Chairman Fellows and staff, we had a unanimous recommendation to bring forward Ms. Vale.
Thanks, Liam. Any public comment on this? Seeing none. Do we have a motion? I'll look for it this time.
Second.
All right. There gets one in under the wire. I'll just start off, since I did have the opportunity to be involved with the interview process. And as Liam said, both of the finalists were very strong. They were both really good conversations, both highly qualified, experienced professionals who have experience in Greater Portland and beyond. I was particularly impressed by Deanne's not only apparent skill based on her resume and her profile and the way she answered the questions and discussed things, but really very clearly a strong work ethic, and really, as we spoke with her, really came through that she places a lot of value on communication, which, as we know from recent and ongoing experience, is really important. That's one of the areas in which, she's going to have big shoes to fill. But she clearly places a lot of value on that, and I look forward to having her on board. Any other questions or comments? Bill?
Yeah, I'm delighted to hear the strong endorsement, and her record looks like,
Good.
I think it's, gee, she could have gotten a better, even higher up than us, but I'm delighted to have her. And I think assessor is a difficult position because there's a lot of controversy associated with assessments. So
Right.
a person with this sort of experience, I'm excited to have her join us.
Great. Couple other quick comments. One, as part of the process, the candidates did meet with staff. I think it was just the finalists, right, who met with staff. And I understand that the feedback on both was very strong, particularly for Deanne. And then I was struck as well, and of course they're interviewing for a position, so they're going to say nice things about us. But it really seemed like there was a genuine admiration for what Scarborough's done, the staff that we have, and the way the town operates, and that it clearly was an attractive opportunity. So again, assuming we all approve, we look forward to welcoming her into the fold. Anything else? That all in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Corey, when will she start?
I will turn that over to our HR director.
March 9th. March 9th will be her first day. Yeah.
That's soon.
Yeah.
Right.
William says not soon enough, right?
I will say the staff's been great. We have the benefit of having a long time, very capable deputy assessor who not only has continued, but also is intimately involved in the process and has support. And I would also be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that Nick Cloutier, on his way out the door, we asked him to really share the opportunity. And I think some of our stronger candidates, got a nudge from him to really jump in the fold. So really a lot of respect for him as well.
All right. We have no non-action items, and that takes us to council member comments. John.
Yeah, I just want to thank Larry for doing what you did, going up to Augusta. I think you're being a little bit hard on yourself in terms of
I agree.
what you're able to accomplish. I think, one, this again, as long as I've been on the council, I don't think any of us have ever gone to Augusta and tried to do this. And so I don't think any of us knew exactly how it works or what to expect. I will say for me, it was the first time. And the piece that I took away from this is, as much as we hear from people about sometimes how we don't allow enough comment or we're difficult to work with, I think the state is that like times 20.
Yeah.
I couldn't I like to think of myself as like pretty tech savvy. I couldn't figure out how to find the Zoom link. I couldn't figure out how to go through their website. Like it was just a bear. And so I think for you to kind of trudge through and make it up there and make it a priority, I just really appreciate it. Yeah, twice.
That's above and beyond.
The first time I was able to make it on the Zoom. But again, I was like, I don't know how this works. Like, are they going to call on me? Do I raise my hand? So again, it's just, it's a little bit disappointing, to be honest, to see in Augusta how difficult it is for people to be able to participate. And I did talk with Sophie Warren a little bit afterwards, and she said this is something that I guess they talk about often, is like there has to be reform there because it's very complicated. And the fact that they schedule meetings but can go over, like I just think if we ever did that, where we had a public hearing for something and started 2 hours late and then said, just kidding, it's too late, we're tired. Like, I just think that is not good governance. And that's a learning for me. And I think that's something that I would like to see our state legislatures fix, because that's just, to me, unacceptable to operate that way. But again, thank you for going up and dealing with the dysfunction and making us be heard. And I think it was very impactful.
Great. Any other council comments?
I have a couple. I also want to thank Larry. I did, send him a note yesterday and say, good luck. And then this morning, I'm like, did it happen? But I think it is. And I think that we did learn something, but I will say that I've heard from a number of people, from other towns, that they've been impressed with the fact that we've taken the lead on all this and that we've been professional, and we had a proclamation, and then we sort of had a rebuttal, then we had people going up, and I think it says a lot to certainly our town leadership, but I think to the council, and I think I felt like put a assertive foot forward and really put a stake in the ground, and then I think have had a lot of people sort of follow suit, which I think is great. The other thing I'd say is we had last Thursday night a public meeting on Scottle Hill. And as we said before, we had about 25 people. And for me, it was one of the most productive environments that I've seen. And I like that, you know, the council and certainly Tom and Liam were there and the town engineer, Angela, but we had a number of different groups of citizens that came in that were sort of presenting different viewpoints, but it was a really respectful conversation. There was great conversation. There was great like sharing of how this has impacted them personally. There were people that actually live on the road that came and said, you know, I live there and here's how that feels. So I thought that, you know, at the end of the day, we're going to make a decision. And I think that people will respect how we got there because I think they were part of the journey. And I went home that night thinking, this is how I wish government worked all the time.
Thanks. Anyone else?
First, thanks for the comments, John, and I appreciate the support all around and from town staff as well. I had a couple other things that are kind of good news things. Scarborough Girls Indoor Track won the state championship this past weekend, second time in 3 years. So that was really exciting to see. And Chief Kinderland commented to me as I was riding along with him, that he at home, he heard all these sirens and called in to say what was going on. And they got a fire and police escort coming back into town. So that was fun. And then I want to thank Allison Carrier for the insert in the tax bill. That was phenomenally done, I think, and it just explained a lot of the things, reinforced a lot of the communications we're already doing. So I just wanted to say thanks publicly to her for pulling that together.
Thanks. Yeah, just piggybacking on that, I've had been joking around with a couple of my neighbors this week about the fact that they included a picture of all of us with the tax bill. But, you know, it's all about accountability. You got to own it. But yeah, I get it. And we hear a lot, again, all of our conversations about, you know, not having the leader, and people really appreciate having that paper. So I'll sort of just quickly echo what John and others said about, you know, Larry and others who took the effort to testify. And again, thanks staff, particularly Autumn, for all of the heavy lifting that she did kind of behind the scenes, redlining and summarizing things and cataloging potential ordinance changes and so forth. And then I also agree with what John said about, you know, the importance of our state legislators. And we've talked about this a little bit, but I think it's also important to keep in mind we're in an election year and there's likely to be some musical chairs, depending on what happens with our House reps and our state senators. So we want to make sure we stay tuned into that and continue to cultivate those relationships. So any other counselor comments? No? That I would welcome a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Good night.
Night. Thank you.